So Long a Letter by Mariama, narrated by Adamu Abdulmajid. Chapter 1. Dear Isatu, I have received your letter. By way of reply, I am beginning this diary, my prop in my distress. Our long association has taught me that confiding in others allays pain. Your presence in my life is by no means fortuitous. Our grandmothers in their compounds were separated by a fence and would exchange messages daily. Our mothers used to argue over who would look after our uncles and aunts. As for us, we wore out wrappers and sandals on the same stony road to the Quranic school. We buried our milk seats in the same holes and begged our fairy godmothers to restore them to us more splendid than before. If over the years, and passing through the realities of life, dreams die, I still keep intact my memories, the salt of remembrance. I conjure you up. The past is reborn. Along with its procession of emotions, I close my eyes, ebb and tide of feeling, heat of dazzlement, the firewoods, the sharp green mangoes beaten into intense, a delicacy in our greedy mouths. I close my eyes, ebb and tide of images. Drops of sweat beading your mother's ochre-colored face as she emerges from the kitchen. The procession of young wet girls chatting on their way from the springs. We walk the same paths from adolescence to maturity, where the past begins the present. My friend, my friend, my friend. I call on you 3 times. Yesterday you were divorced. Today I am a widow. Modo is dead. How am I to tell you? One does not fix appointments with fate. Fate grasps whom it wants, when it wants. When it moves in the direction of your desires, it brings you plenitude. But more often than not, it unsettles, crosses you. Then one has to endure. I endured a telephone call which disrupted my life. A taxi quickly hailed. Fast, fast, faster still. My throat is dry. There is a rigid lump in my chest. Fast, faster still. At last, the hospital. The mixed smell of separation and ether. The hospital. Distorted faces. A train of tearful people, known and unknown, witnesses to this awful tragedy. A long corridor, which seemed to stretch out endlessly. At the end, a room. In the room, a bed. On the bed, mother stretched out, cut out from the world of the living by a white sheet in which he is completely enveloped. A trembling hand moves towards and slowly uncovers the body. His hairy chest, at rest forever, is visible through his crumpled blue shirt with thin strips. This face, set in pain and surprise, is indeed his. The bowed forehead, the half-open mouth are indeed his. I wanted to grab his hand, but someone pulls me away. I can hear Maudo, his doctor friend, explaining to me. A heart attack came on suddenly in his office while he was dictating a letter. The secretary had the presence of mind to call me. Mulder recounts the massaging of the heart that was undertaken, as well as the futile effort at mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. Again, I think, heart massage, mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, ridiculous weapons against the divine will. I listen to the words that create around me a new atmosphere in which I move, a strange and tormented, death, the tenuous passage between 2 opposite worlds, one tumultuous, the other still. Where to lie down? Middle age demands dignity. I hold tightly to my prayer beads. I tell the beads ardently, remaining standing on my legs of jelly. My loins beat as to the rhythm of childbirth. Cross sections of my life spring involuntarily from my memory. Grandiose verses from the Quran, noble words of consolation fight for my attention. Joyous miracle of birth, dark miracle of death. Between the two, a life, a destiny, says Mauduba. I look intently at Maudu. He seems to be taller than usual in his white overall. He seems to me thin. His reddened eyes express 40 years of friendship. I admire his noble hands. hands of an absolute delicacy, supple hands used to tracking down illness. Those hands, moved by friendship and a rigorous science, could not save his friend. So long a letter. Chapter 2. Fall is indeed dead, I settle. The unprecedented procession of men and women who have learned of it, the wails and tears all around me, confirm his death. This condition of extreme tension sharpens my suffering and continues till the following day, the day of interment. What a seething crowd of human beings come from all parts of the country, where the radio has relayed the news. Women, close relatives, are busy. They must take incense, load the cloche, cotton wool to the hospital for the washing of the dead one. The 7 meters of white muslin, the only clothing Islam allows for the dead, are carefully placed into a basket. The Zamzam, the miracle water from the holy places of Islam, religiously kept by each family, is not forgotten. Rich dark wrapper are chosen to cover Modo. My back propped up by cushion, legs outstretched, my head covered with a black wrapper. I follow the comings and goings of people. Across from me, a new winnowing fan, bought for the occasion, receives the first arms. The presence of my co-wife beside me irritates me. She has been installed in my house for the funeral, in accordance to tradition. With each passing hour, her cheeks become more deeply hollowed. Acquired ever more rings, those big and beautiful eyes, which open and close on their secret, perhaps their regrets. At the age of love and freedom from care, this child is dodged by sadness. While the men, in long irregular file of official and private cars, public buses, lorries, and mopeds, accompany Modo to his last rest, people were for a long time to talk about the crowd which followed the funeral procession. Our sisters-in-law undo our hair. My co-wife and myself are put inside a rough and ready tent made of a wrapper, pulled down above our heads, and set up for the occasion. While our sisters-in-law are constructing it, the women present, informed of the work at hand, get up and throw some coins on the flattering canopy so as to ward off evil spirits. This is the moment dreaded by every Senegalese woman, the moment when she sacrifices her possessions as gifts to her family in-law, and worse still, beyond her possessions, she gives up her personality, her dignity, becoming a thing in service of the man who has married her, his grandfather, his grandmother, his father, his mother, his brother, his sister, his uncle, his aunt, his male and female cousins, his friends. Her behavior is conditioned. No sister-in-law would tie the head of any wife who has been stingy, unfaithful, or inhospitable. As for us, we have been deserving, and our sisters-in-law sing a chorus of praises chanted at the top of their voices. Our patience before all trials, the frequency of our gifts find their justifications and reward today. Our sisters-in-law give equal consideration to 30 years and 5 years of married life. With the same ease and the same words, they celebrate 12 maternities and 3. I note with outrage this desire to level out in which Maudo's new mother-in-law rejoices. Having washed their hands in a bowl of water placed at the entrance of the house, the men, back from the cemetery, file past the family group around us, the widows. They offer their condolences, punctuated with praises of the deceased. Modo, friend of the young, as of the old. Modo, the lion-hearted, champion of the oppressed. Modo, at ease as much in a suit as in a kaftan. Modo, good brother, good husband, good Muslim. May God forgive him. May he regret his earthly stay in his heavenly bliss. May the earth rest lightly on him. They are there, his childhood playmates on the football ground, or during bed hands when they use catapults. They are there, his classmates. They are there, his companions in the trade union struggles. The Sengal and the Gali come one after the other, poignant, while scale hands distribute to the crowd biscuits, sweets, cola nuts, judiciously mixed, the first offerings to heaven for the peaceful repose of the diseased soul. So long a letter. Chapter 3. On the third day, the same comings and goings of friends, relatives, the poor, the unknown. The name of the disease, who has become popular, has mobilized a buzzing crowd. Welcomed in my house that has been stripped of all that could be stolen, all that could be spoiled. Mats of all sorts are spread out everywhere there is space. Metal chairs, hired for the occasion, take on a blue hue in the sun. Comforting words from the Quran fill the air. Divine words, divine instructions, impressive promises of punishment or joy, exaltation of virtue, warnings against evil, exaltation of humility, of faith. Shivers run through me, my tears flow, and my voice joins weakly in the fervent Amen, which inspires a crowd's ardor at the end of each verse. The smell of the lac cooling in the calabashes pervades the air, exciting. Also, pass around are large bowls of red and white rice, cooked here or in neighboring houses. Iced fruit juices, water, and cards are served in plastic cups. The men's group eats in silence. Perhaps they remember the stiff body tied up and lowered by their hands into a gaping hole, quickly covered up again. In the woman's corner, nothing but noise, resonant laughter, loud talk, hand slap, strident exclamations. Friends who have not seen each other over a long time hug each other noisily. Some discuss the latest material on the market. Others indicate where they got their woven wrappers from. The latest bits of gossip are exchanged. They laugh heartily and roll their eyes and admire the next person's boo-boo. Her original ways of using henna to blacken hands and feet by drawing geometrical figures on them. From time to time, an exasperated manly voice rings out a warning, recalls the purpose of the gathering, a ceremony for the redemption of a soul. The voice is quickly forgotten, and the brouhaha begins all over again, increasing in volume. In the evening comes the most disconcerting part of the Thursday ceremony. More people, more jostling, in order to hear and see better. Groups are formed according to relationships, according to family ties, areas, corporations. Each group displays its contribution to the cost. In former times, this contribution was made in kind: millets, livestock, rice, flour, oil, sugar, milk. Today, it is made conspicuously in banknotes, and no one wants to give less than the other. A disturbing display of inner feelings that cannot be evaluated, now measured in francs. And again, I think how many of the dead would have survived if before organizing these festive funeral ceremonies, the relatives or friend had bought a life-saving prescription or paid for hospitalization. The takings are carefully recorded. It is the debt to be repaid in similar circumstances. Modo's relative opened an excise book. Lady mother-in-law, Modos, and her daughter have a notebook. Fatimi, my younger sister, carefully recorded my takings in a notepad. As I come from a large family in this town, with acquaintances at all levels of society, as I am a school teacher on friendly terms with the people's parents, and as I have been Modo's companion for 30 years, I receive the greatest share of money and many envelopes. The regard shown me raises me in the eyes of the others, and it is Lady Mother's in-law's turn to be annoyed. Newly admitted into the city's bourgeoisie by her daughter's marriage, she too reaps banknotes. As for her silent, haggard child, she remained a stranger in these circles. The sudden calls from her sisters-in-law bring her out of her stupor. They reappear after their deliberation. They had contributed a large sum of 200,000 francs to dress us. Yesterday, they offered us some excellent tiankery to quench our thirst. The Ford family's griot is proud of her role as go-between, a role handed down from mother to daughter. 100,000 francs from the father's side, 100,000 francs from the mother's side. She counts the notes, blue and pink, one by one, shows them around and concludes, I have much to say about you falls, children of Daniel Madiodio, who have inherited royal blood. But one of you is no more. Today is not a happy day. I weep with you for Modo, whom I used to call bag of rice, for he will frequently give me a sack of rice. Therefore, Accept this money, you worthy widows of a worthy man. The share of each widow must be doubled, as might the gifts of Modo's grandchildren, represented by the offspring of all his male and female cousins. Thus, our family in-law take away with them a word of notes, painstakingly taught, and leaves us utterly destitute, we who will need material support. Afterwards comes the procession of old relatives, old acquaintances, griots, goldsmiths, lobbies with their honeyed language. The goodbyes following one after the other at an infernal rate was irritating because they are neither simple nor free. They require, depending on the person leaving, sometimes a coin, sometimes a banknote. Gradually, the house empties. The smell of stale sweat and food blend astral in the air, unpleasant and nauseating. Cola nuts spat out here and there have left red stains. My towels, kept with such painstaking care, are blackened. Oil stains on the wall, balls of crumpled paper. What a balance sheet for a day. My horizon lightened. I see an old woman. Who is she? Where is she from? Bent over the ends of her boo tied behind her, she empties into a plastic bag the leftovers of red rice. Her smiling face tells of the pleasant day she has just had. She wants to take back proof of this to her family living perhaps in Wakam, Tiarori, or Pekini. Standing upright, her eyes meeting my disapproving look, she mutters between her teeth, reddened by cola nuts. Lady, death is just as beautiful as life has been. Alas, it is the same story on the 8th and 40th days, when those who have learned belatedly make up for lost time. Light attire, showing off slim waistlines, prominent backsides, and new braziers, or the ones bought at the second-hand markets, chewing stick wedded between teeth, white or flowered shawls, heavy smell of incense and gong, loud voices, stringent laughter, and yet we are told in the Quran that on the third day the dead body swells and fills its tomb. We are also told that on the 8th it bursts, and we are also told that on the 40th day it is stripped. What then is the significance of these joyous institutionalized festivities that accompany our prayers for God's mercy? Who has come out of self-interest? Who has come to quench his own thirst? Who has come for the sake of mercy? Who has come so that he may remember? Tonight, Benito, my co-wife, will return to a Sika villa. At last, phew. The visits of condolence continue. The sick, those who have journeyed or have merely arrived late, as well as the lazy, come to fulfill what they consider to be a sacred duty. Child naming ceremonies may be missed, but never a funeral. Coins and notes continue to pour on the beckoning fan. Alone, I live in a monotony broken only by purifying baths, the changing of my morning clothing every Monday and Friday. I hope to carry my duties fully. My heart concurs with the demands of religion, reared since childhood on their strict precepts. I expect not to fail. The walls that limit my horizon for 4 months and 10 days do not bother me. I have enough memories in me to ruminate upon. And these are what I am afraid of. This mark of bitterness. May their evocation not soil the state of purity in which I must live. Till tomorrow. So long a letter. Chapter 4. I said to my friend, perhaps I am boring you by relating what you already know. I have never observed so much because I have never been so concerned. The family meeting held this morning in my sitting room is at last over. You can easily guess those who were present. Lady Mother-in-law, her brother, her daughter Benito, who was even thinner, old Tamsir, Mudo's brother, and the imam from the mosque in his area, Mauduba, my daughter, and her husband Abdul. The mirage commanded by the Quran requires that a dead person be stripped of his intimate secrets, thus is exposed to others what was carefully concealed. This exposure crudely explains a man's life. With consternation, I measured the extent of Modo's betrayal, his abandonment of his first family, myself and his children, was the outcome of the choice of a new life. He rejected us. He mapped out his future without taking our existence into account. His promotion to the rank of technical advisor in the Ministry of Public Works, in exchange for which, according to the spiteful, he checked the trade union revolt, could not control the mere expenses by which he was engulfed. Dead without a penny saved, acknowledgement of debts, a pile of them, cloth and gold traders, home delivery grocers and butchers, car purchase installments. Hold on, the attraction of the stipend, the origins of the elegant Seca villa, 4 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, pink and blue, large sitting room, a 3-room flat built at his own expense at the bottom of the second courtyard for Lady Mother-in-law, and furniture from France for his new wife, and furniture constructed by local carpenters for Lady Mother-in-law. This house and its chic contents were acquired by a bank loan granted on the mortgage of Villa Fallen, where I live. Although the title deeds of this house bear his name, it is nonetheless our common property, acquired by our joint stock. Insult upon injury. Moreover, he continued a monthly payment of 75,000 francs to the SECAP. These payments were to go on for 10 years before the house would become his. 4 million francs, borrowed with ease because of his privileged position, which had enabled him to pay for Lady Mother-in-law and her husband to visit Mecca to acquire the titles of Alaja and Alaji, which equally enabled Benito to exchange her Alfa Romeos at the slightest dent. Now, I understand the terrible significance of Modo's abandonment of our joint bank account. He wanted to be financially independent so as to have enough elbow room. And then, having withdrawn Benito from school, he paid her a monthly allowance of 50,000 francs, just like a salary due to her. The young girl, who was very gifted, wanted to continue her studies, to sit for her baccalaureate, so as to establish his rule. Modo, wickedly, determined to remove her from the critical and aspiring world of the young. He therefore gave in to all the conditions of the grasping Lady Mother-in-law, and even signed a paper committing himself to paying the said amount. Lady Mother-in-law brandished the paper, for she firmly believed that the payments would continue even after Modo's death out of the estate. As for my daughter Daba, she waved about a bailiff affidavit dated on the very day of her father's death that listed all the content of the Seca villa. The list supplied by Lady Mother-in-law and Benito made no mention of certain objects and items of furniture which had mysteriously disappeared or had been fraudulently removed. You know that I am excessively sentimental. I was not at all pleased by this display on either side. So long a letter. Chapter 5. When I stopped yesterday, I probably left you astonished by my disclosures. Was it madness? Weakness? Irresistible love? What inner confusion left Mordeful to marry Benito? To overcome my bitterness, I think of human destiny. Each life has its share of heroism, an obscure heroism born of abdication, of renunciation and acceptance under the merciless whip of fate. I think of all the blind people the world over, moving in darkness. I think of all the paralyzed the world over, dragging themselves about. I think of all the lepers the world over, wasted by their disease, victims of a fate which you did not choose, compared with your lamentations. What is my quarrel? Cruelly motivated with a dead man who no longer has any hold over my destiny. Combining your despair, you could have been avengers and made them tremble. All those who drank on their wealth tremble, those upon whom fate bestowed favor. A heart powerful in its repugnance and revolt, you could have snatched the bread that your hunger craves. Your stoicism has made you not violent or subversive, but true heroes, unknown in the mainstream of history, never upsetting established order, despite miserable condition. I repeat, beside your visible deformities, what are moral infirmities, from which in any case you are not immune? Thinking of you, I thank God for my eyes, which daily embrace heaven and earth. If today moral fatigue made my limbs stiff, tomorrow it will leave my body. Then, relieved, my legs will carry me slowly, and I shall again have around me the iodine and the blue of the sea. The star and white cloud will be mine. The breath of the wind will again refresh my face. I will stretch out, turn around. I will vibrate. Oh, health, live in me. Oh, health. My efforts cannot long take my mind off my disappointment. I think of the suckling baby, no sooner born than orphaned. I think of the blind, who will never see his child smile. I think of the cross the one armed man has to bear. I think, but my despair persists, but my rancor remains, but the waves of my immense sadness break in me. Madness or weakness, heartlessness or irresistible love? What inner torment led Maldo fall to marry Benito? And to think that I loved this man passionately, to think that I gave him 30 years of my life, to think that 12 times over I carried his child. The addition of a rival to my life was not enough for him. In loving someone else, he buried his past, both morally and materially. He dared to commit such an act of disavowal, and yet, what didn't he do to make me his wife? So long a letter. Chapter 6. Do you remember the morning train that took us for the first time to Pontyville, the teachers' training college in Sabokotani? Pontyville is a countryside still green from the last rains, a celebration of youth right in the middle of nature. Banjo music in dormitories transformed into dance floors. Conversations held along the rows of geraniums or under the thick mango trees. Mode 4. The very moment you bowed before me, asking me to dance, I knew you were the one I was waiting for. Tall and athletically built, of course. Olive color skin, due to your distant Moorish blood. No question. Virility and fineness of features, harmoniously blended. Once again, no question. But above all, you knew how to be tender, how to fathom every thought, every desire. You knew many undefinable things which glorified you and sealed our relationship. As we danced, your forehead, hairline already receding, bent over my own. The same happy smile lit up our faces. The pressure of your hand became more tender, more possessive. Everything in me gave in, and our relationship endured the school years, and during the holidays, strengthened in me by the discovery of your subtle intelligence, of your embracing sensitivity, of your readiness to help, of your ambition, which suffered no mediocrity. It was this ambition which led you, on leaving school, to prepare on your own for the two examinations of baccalaureate, and then left for France. And according to your letters, you lived there as a recluse, attaching little importance to the glitter that met your regard. But you grasped a deep sense of history that has worked so many wonders, and of a great culture that overwhelmed you. The milky complexion of the woman had no hold on you. Again, quoting from your letters, on the strictly physical plane, the white woman's advantage over the black woman lies in the variety of her color, the abundance, length, and softness of her hair. There was also the eyes, which can be blue, green, often the color of new honey. You also used to complain of the somberness of the sky, and I wish no coconut tree waved their tops. You miss the swinging hips of black women walking along the pavements, this gracious, deliberate slowness characteristic of Africa, which charmed your eyes. You were sick at heart of the dog rhythm of the life of the people and the numbing effects of the cold. You will finish by saying that your studies were your staff, your buttress. You will end it with a string of endearments and conclude by reassuring me, as you whom I carry within me, you're my protecting black angel. Would I could quickly find you, if only to hold your hand tightly, so that I may forget hunger and thirst and loneliness. And you returned in triumph with a degree in law. In spite of your voice and your gift of oratory, you preferred obscure work, less well paid, but constructive for the country, to the sureness of the lawyer. Your achievement did not stop there. Your introduction to your friend, Mauduba, into our circle was to change the life of my best friend Aisatu. I no longer scorn my mother's reserve concerning you, for a mother can instinctively feel where her child's happiness lies. I no longer laugh when I think that she found you too handsome, too polished, too perfect for a man. She often spoke of the wide gap between your two upper incisors, the sign of primacy of sensuality in the individual. What didn't she do from then on to separate us? She could see in you only the eternal khaki suit, the uniform of your school. All she remembered of you were your visits, considered too long. You were idle, she said, therefore, with plenty of time to waste. And you will use the time to stuff my head to the disadvantage of more interesting young people. Because, being the pioneers of the promotion of African women, there were very few of us. Men will call us scatterbrained, others labeled as evil, but many wanted to possess us. How many dreams did we nourish hopelessly that could have been fulfilled as lasting happiness, and that we abandoned to embrace others, those that have burst miserably, like soap bubbles, leaving us empty handed? So long a letter. Chapter 7. I settle. I will never forget the white woman who was the first to desire for us an uncommon destiny. Together, let us recall our school. Green, pink, blue, yellow, a veritable rainbow. Green, blue, and yellow, the colors of the flowers everywhere in the compound. Pink, the color of the dormitories, with beds impeccably made. Let us hear the walls of our school come to life with the intensity of our study. Let us relive its intoxicating atmosphere at night, while the evening song, our joint prayer, rang out full of hope. The admission policy, which was based on an entrance examination for the whole of former French West Africa, now broken up into autonomous republics, made possible a fruitful blend of different intellects, characters, manners, and customs. Nothing differentiated us, apart from the racial features. The foreign girl from Dahomey and the Malinke one from Guinea. Friendships were made that have endured the test of time and distance. We were true sisters, destined for the same mission of emancipation, to lift us out of the bog of tradition, superstition, and custom, to make us appreciate a multitude of civilization without renouncing our own, to raise our vision of the world, cultivate our personalities, strengthen our qualities, to make up for our inadequacies, to develop universal moral values in us. These were the aims of our admirable headmistress. The word love had a particular resonance in her. She loved us without patronizing us, with our plates either standing on end or bent down, with our loose blouses, our wrappers. She knew how to discover and appreciate our qualities. How I think of her, if the memory of her has triumphed over the ingratitude of time, now that flowers no longer smelled as sweetly or as strongly as before, now that age and mature reflection has stripped our dreams of their poetic virtue, it is because the path chosen for our training and our blossoming has not been at all fortuitous. It has accorded with profound choices made by New Africa for the promotion of the black woman. Thus, free from the frustrating taboos and capable now of discernment, why should I follow my mother's fingers pointing out Dauda Din, still a bachelor, but too mature for my 18 years? Working as an African doctor at the polyclinic, he was well to do, and he knew how to use his position to his advantage. His villa, perched on a rock on the Corniche facing the sea, was a meeting place of the young elites. Nothing was missing, from the refrigerator containing its pleasant drinks to the record player, which exuded sometimes languorous, sometimes frenzied music. Dauda Din also knew how to win hearts. Useful presents for my mother, ranging from a sack of rice, appreciated in that time of war penury, to the frivolous gifts for me, daintily wrapped in paper and tied with ribbons. But I preferred a man in the eternal khaki suit. Our marriage was celebrated without dowry, without pomp, under the disapproving look of my father, before the painful indignation of my frustrated mother, under the sarcasm of my surprised sister, in our town, struck down with astonishment. So long a letter. Chapter 8. Then came your marriage with Mauduba, recently graduated from the African School of Medicine and Pharmacy. A controversial marriage. I can still hear the angry rumors in town. What? A Tukule marrying a goldsmith's daughter? He will never make money. Maudu's mother is a Diofeni, a Galiwa from the Sine. What an insult to her before her co-wives. Maudu's father was dead. In the desire to marry a short skirt come what may, this is what one gets. School turns girls into devils who lure our men away from the right path. And I haven't recounted all, but Maudu remained firm. Marriage is a personal thing, he retorted to anyone who cared to hear. He emphasized his total commitment to his choice of life partner by visiting your father, not at home, but at his place of work. He will return from his outings illuminated, happy to have moved in the right direction. He will say triumphantly, he will speak to your father as a creative artist. He admired the man, weakened as he was, by the daily dose of carbon dioxide inhaled, working in the acrid atmosphere of dusty fumes. Gold is his medium, which he melts, pours, twists, flattens, refines, chases. You should see him, Maudie would add. You should see him breathe over the flame. His cheeks will swell with the life from his lungs. This life will animate the fire, sometimes red, sometimes blue, which will rise or curve, wax or wane at his command, depending on what the work demanded. And the gold specks into the showers of red sparks and uncouth songs of the apprentices, punctuating the strokes of the hammer here, and the pressure of the hands of the bellow there, would make the passers-by turn round. I settle. Your father knew all the rights that protects the working of gold, the metal of the genes. Each profession has its code, known only by the initiated, and transmitted from father to son. As soon as your elder brothers left the hearts of the circumcised, they move into this particular world, the whole compound source of nourishment. But what about your younger brothers? Their steps were directed towards the white man's school. Hard is the climb up the steep hill of knowledge to the white man's school. Kindergarten remains a luxury that only those who are financially sound can offer their young ones. Yet, it is necessary, for it is what sharpens and channels the young one's attention and sensibility. Even though the primary schools are typically increasing, access to them has not become any easier. They live out in the streets, an impressive number of children because of the lack of places. Entrance into secondary school is no panacea for the child at an age fraught with the problems of consolidating his personality, with the explosion of puberty, with the discovery of the various pitfalls, drugs, vagrancy, sensuality. The university has its own large number of despairing rejects. What will the unsuccessful do? Apprenticeship to traditional crafts seem degrading to whoever has the slightest book learning. The dream is to become a clerk. The trowel is spent. The horde of the jobless swells a flood of delinquency. Should we have been happy at the desertion of the forges, the workshops, the shoemaker shops? Should we have rejoiced so wholeheartedly? Were we not beginning to witness the disappearance of an elite of traditional manual workers? Eternal questions for eternal debates. We all agreed that marked dismantling was needed to introduce modernity within our traditions. Torn between the past and the present, we deplored the hard sweat that would be inevitable. We counted the possible losses, but we knew that nothing would be as before. We were full of nostalgia, but we were resolutely progressive. So long a letter. Chapter 9. Maudu raised you up to his own level. He, the son of a princess, and you, the child from the forges. His mother's rejection did not frighten him. Our lives developed in parallel. We experienced the tapes and reconciliations of married life. In our different ways, we suffered the social constraints and heavy burden of custom. I loved Mudu. I compromised with his people. I tolerated his sisters, who too often would desert their homes to encumber my own. They allowed themselves to be fed and petted. They would look on without reacting as their children rubbed around my chest. I tolerated their spitting, the phlegm, expertly secreted under my carpets. His mother would stop by again and again, while on her outings, always flanked by different friends, just to show off her son's social success, but particularly so that they might see at close quarters her supremacy in this beautiful house in which she did not live. I would receive her with all the respect due to a queen, and she would leave satisfied, especially if her hand closed over the banknote I had carefully placed there. But hardly would she be out than she would think of the new band of friends she would soon be dazzling. Modo's father was more understanding. More often than not, he would visit us without sitting down. He would accept a glass of cold water and would leave, after repeating his prayers for the protection of the house. I knew how to smile at them all, and consented to wasting useful time in futile chatter. My sisters in law believed me to be spared of the drudgery of housework. With your two housemaids, they will say with emphasis, try explaining to them that a working woman is no less responsible for a home. Try explaining to them that nothing is done if you do not step in, that you have to see to everything, do everything all over again, cleaning up, cooking, ironing. There are children to be watched, the husband to be looked after. The working woman has a dual task, of which both halves, equally odious, must be reconciled. How does she go about this? Therein lies the skill that makes all the difference at home. Some of my sisters in law do not envy my way of living. They saw me dashing around the house after a hard day at school. They appreciated their comfort, their peace of mind, their moments of leisure, and allowed themselves to be looked after by their husbands, who were crushed under their duties. Others, limited in their way of thinking, envied my comfort and purchasing power. They would go into raptures over the many gadgets in my house: gas cooker, vegetable grater, sugar tongs. They forgot the source of my easy life. First up in the morning, last to go to bed, always working. You, I said to, you forsake your family in law, tightly shut in with their dignity. You will lament to me, your family in law respects you. You must treat them well. As for me, they look down on me from the height of their nobility. What can I do? While Mauda's mother planned her revenge, we lived. Christmas Eve parties, organized by several couples, with a cost shared equally, and held in tents in different homes. Without consciousness, we relived the dances of yesterday. The lively beguine frenzied rambas, languid tangos. We rediscovered the old beating of the heart that strengthened our feelings. We will also leave the stifling city to breathe in the healthy air of the seaside suburb. We will walk down along the Dakar Corniche, one of the most beautiful in West Africa, a sheer work of art wrought by nature. Rounded or pointed rocks, black or ochre colored, overlooking the ocean, greenery, sometimes a veritable hanging garden spread out under the green sky. We will go on to the road of Wakam, which also leads to Ungo, and farther on to Yoff Airport. We will recognize on the way the farther road leading farther on the Almadis beach. Situated near the village of the same name, where old bearded fishermen repaired their nets under the silk cotton trees, naked and snotty children played in the complete freedom when we were not frolicking about the sea. On the fine sand, washed by the waves and swollen with water, naively painted canoes awaited their turn to be launched into the waters. In their hollow small pools of blue water would glisten, full of light from the sky and sun. What a crowd on public holidays! Numerous families would stroll about, thirsty for space and fresh air. People would underdress, without embarrassment, tempted by the benevolent caress of the iodized breeze and the warmth from the sun's rays. The ideal would sleep under spread parasols. A few children, spade and buckets in hand, will build and demolish the castles of their imagination. In the evening, the fishermen returned from their laborious outings. Once more, they had escaped the moving snare of the sea. At first, simple points on the horizon, the boats would become more distinct from one another as they drew nearer. They would dance in the hollows of the waves, then would lazily let themselves to be hanged along. Fishermen would gaily furl their sails and draw in their tackle, while some of them will gather together the wringing catch. Others will wring out their soaked clothing and mop their faces. Under the wondering gaze of the kids, the live fish will flip up as the long sea snakes will curl themselves inwards. There is nothing more beautiful than a fish just out of water, its eyes clear and fresh, with golden and slippery scales and beautiful bluish gleams. Hens will sort out, group, divide. We'll buy a good selection at bargain prices for the house. The sea air will put us in good humor. The pleasure we indulge in, and in which all our senses rejoice, will intoxicate both rich and poor with health. Our communion with deep, bottomless, and unlimited nature refreshed our souls. Depression and sadness will disappear, suddenly be replaced by feeling of plenitude and expansiveness. Reinvigorated, we will set out for home. How jealously we gather the secret of simple pleasure, health-giving remedy for the daily tensions of life. Do you remember the picnic we organized at Salgankam? In the farm Malduba inherited from his father? Sangalkam remains a refuge of people from Dakar, those who want a break from the frenzy of the city. The younger set in particular has bought land there and built country residences. These green open spaces are conducive to rest, meditation, and the letting off of steam by children. This oasis lies on the road of Rufisque. Maudu's mother had looked after the farm before her son's marriage. The memory of her husband had made her attached to this plot of land, where her joints and patent hand had disciplined the vegetation that filled her eyes with admiration. Yourself, you added a small building at the far end, 3 small simple bedrooms, a bathroom, a kitchen. You grew many flowers in a few corners. You had a hand-run belt, then a clothespin for sheep. Coconut trees, with their interlacing leaves, gave protection from the sun. Succulent sapodilla stood next to the sweet-smelling pomegranate. Heavy mango trees weighed down the branches. Pawpaws, resembling breasts of different shapes, hung tempting and inaccessible from the tops of the elongated trunks. Green leaves and brown leaves, new grasses and wilted grasses were strewn all over the ground. Under our feet, the ants entirely built and rebuilt their homes. How warm the shades over the camp beds! Teams for games were formed, one after the other, amid cries of victories and lamentation of defeat. And we starved ourselves with fruits within easy reach, and we drank the milk from the coconuts, and we told juicy stories, and we danced about, roused by the stringed notes of a gramophone, and the lamp, seasoned with white pepper, garlic, butter, hot pepper, would be roasting over the wood fire. And we lived. When we stood in front of our overcrowded classes, we represented a force in which enormous effort to be accomplished in order to overcome ignorance. Each profession, intellectual or manual, deserves recognition, whether it requires painful physical efforts or manual dexterity, wide knowledge, or the patience of the ants. Ours, like that of the doctor, does not allow for any mistake. You do not joke with life, and life is both body and mind. To warp a soul is as much sacrilege as murder. Teachers, at the kindergarten level, as at the university level, from a noble army accomplishing daily feats, never praised, never decorated, an army forever on the move, forever vigilant, an army without drums, without gleaming uniforms. This army, swatting traps and snares, everywhere plants the flag of knowledge and morality. How we love this priesthood, humble teachers in humble local schools, how faithful we served our profession, and how we spent ourselves in order to do with honor. Like all apprentices, we have learned how to practice it well at the demonstration school, a few steps away from our own, where experienced teachers taught the novices that we were how to apply, in the lesson we gave, our knowledge of psychology and method. In those children, we set in motion that, breaking, carried away in their fell a bit of ourselves. So long a letter. Chapter 10. Modu rose steadily to the top rank in the trade union organizations. His understanding of people and things endeared him to both employers and workers. He focused his efforts on points that were easily satisfied, that made work lighter and life more pleasant. He sought practical improvements in the workers' conditions. His slogan was, "What's the use of taunting with the impossible? Obtaining the possible is already a victory. His point of view was not unanimously accepted, but people relied on his practical realism. Maudu could take part in neither trade unionism nor politics. He hadn't the time. His reputation as a good doctor was growing. He remained a prisoner to his mission in a hospital filled to capacity with the sick, for people were going less and less to the native doctor who specialized in brewing the same concoctions of leaves for different illnesses. Everybody was reading newspapers and magazines. There was unrest in North Africa. These interminable discussions, during which points of view concurred or clashed, complemented each other or vanquished, determined the aspect of the new Africa. The assimilationist dream of the colonists drew into its curable our mode of thought and way of life. The sand helmets won over the natural protection of our kinky hair, smoke-filled pipe in the mouth, white shorts just above the calves, very short dresses, displaying shapely legs. A whole generation suddenly became aware of the ridiculous situation festering in our midst. History marched on, inexorably. The debates over the right path to take shook West Africa. Brave men went to prison. Others, following their footsteps, continued the work begun. It was a privilege of our generation to be the link between two periods in our generation, one of domination, the other of independence. We remained young and efficient, for we were the messengers of a new design. With independence achieved, we witnessed the birth of a republic, the birth of an anthem, the implantation of a flag. I heard people repeat that all the active forces of the country should be mobilized, and we said that over and above the unavoidable option of such and such a party, such and such a model of society. What was needed was national unity. Many of us rallied around the dominant party, infusing it with new blood. To be productive in the crowd was better than crossing one's arms and hiding behind imported ideologies. Modu, a practical man, led the union into collaboration with the government, demanding for its troops only what was possible. But he cursed the hasty establishment of too many embassies, which he judged to be too costly for our underdeveloped country. The bleeding of the country for reasons of pure vanity, among other things, such as the frequent invitation of foreigners, was just a waste of money. And with his wage earners in mind, he would repeatedly growl, so many schools, or so many hospital equipment lost, so many monthly wage increases, so many tarred roads. You and Maudu will listen to him. We were scaling new heights, but your mother-in-law, who saw you resplendent beside her son, who saw her son going more and more frequent to your father's workshop, who saw your mother filled out and dressed better, your mother-in-law thought more and more of her revenge. So long a letter. Chapter 11. I know that I am shaking you, that I am twisting a knife in a wood hardly healed, but what can I do? I cannot help remembering in my forced solitude and reclusion. Mauda's mother is Auntie Nabu to us, and say Nabu to others. She bore a glorious name in Sine, Diop. She is a descendant of Boisine. She lived in the past, unaware of the changing world. She clung to old beliefs. Being strongly attached to her privileged origins, she believed firmly that blood carried with its virtues, and, nodding her head, she would repeat that humble birth will always show in a person's bearing. And life had not been kind to Mauda's mother. Very early, she lost her dear husband. Bravely, she brought up her eldest son, Maudu, and two other daughters, now married and well married. She devoted herself with the affection of a tigress to her one and only man, Mauduba. When she swore by her son's nose, the symbol of life, now the only man was moving away from her. Through the fault of this cursed daughter of a goldsmith, worse than a griot's woman. The griots bring happiness, but a goldsmith's daughter, she burns everything in her path, like the fire in the forge. So, while we live without consent, considering your marriage a problem of the past, Mauda's mother thought day and night of a way to get her revenge on you, the goldsmith daughter. One fine day, she decided to pay a visit to her younger brother, Fabadiov, a customary chief in the Akoi. She packed a few well-chosen clothes into a suitcase, that she borrowed from me, stuffed a basket full of various purchases, provisions and foodstuffs that are dear or rare in the city, fruits from France, cheese, preserves, toys for nephews, lengths of material for her brother and his four wives. She asked Mordo for some money, which she carefully folded and put away in her purse. She had her hair done, painted her feet and hands with henna. Thus, dressed, adorned, she left. These days, the road to Rufisque Forks at the Damiendio crossroads, the national one to the right, leads after Umbo to the Cine Salom, while the national two goes through Thieves and Tiviawane, cradle of Tijanism, towards St. Louis, former capital of Senegal. Auntie Nabu did not enjoy the benefit of these pleasant roads. Jostled in a bus on the bumpy road, she sought refuge in her memories. The dizzying speed of the vehicle, carrying her towards the place of her childhood, did not prevent her from recognizing the familiar countryside. Here, Sinja, and to the left, Pompiguen, where the Catholics celebrated Western. How many generations has this same unchanging countryside seen glide past? Auntie Nabu acknowledged man's vulnerability in the face of the eternity of nature. By its duration, nature defies time and takes its revenge on man. The baobab trees held out giant knots of their branches towards the skies. Slowly, the cows moved across the road, their mournful stare defying the vehicles. Shepherds in baggy trousers, their sticks on their shoulder or in their hands, guided the animals. Men and animals blended, as in a picture risen from the depths of time. Auntie Nabu closed her eyes every time the bus passed another vehicle. She was especially frightened with the big lorries with their huge loads. The beautiful Medinatu Minawura mosques had not yet been built to the glory of Islam, but in the same pious spirit, men and women prayed by the side of the road. You have to come away from the car to be convinced of the survival of traditions, murmured Auntie Nabu. On the left, prickly shrubs bordered the Indiasini forest. Monkeys darted out to enjoy the light. Tiadiaye, Tataguin, Diorop, then Ndiodiof, and finally Fatigue, capital of Sine. Puffing and steaming, the bus branch off the left, jostles and still more jostles. Finally, Diakoi, the royal Diakoi. Diakoi, cradle and tomb of Boasini, Diakoi of her ancestors, beloved Diakoi, with a vast compound of its old palace. The vast heaviness tortured her heart on each visit paid to the family domain. First of all, water for ablution, and a marathon way to pray and to meditate before the tomb of the ancestor. And then she let her gaze, marked with sadness and filled with history, roam over the other tombs. Here, the dead and the living live together in the family compound. Each king, returned from his coronation, planted 2 trees in the yard that marked his last resting place. Fervently, Auntie Nabu intoned the religious verses, directing them at the tomb of the dead. Her face wore a tragic mask in this place of grandeur, which sang of the past to the sound of the jujuns, the royal drums. She swore that your existence, I settle, would never tarnish her noble descent. Associated in her thoughts antiquated rites and religion, she remembered the milk to be poured on the Sine to appease the invisible spirits. Tomorrow, in the river, she will make her offerings to protect herself from evil eye, while at the same time attracting the benevolence of the tours. Royally received, she immediately resumed her position as the elder sister of the master of the house. Nobody addressed her without kneeling down. She took her meals alone, having been served with the choicest bits from the pots. Visitors came from everywhere to honor her, thus reminding her of the truth of the law of blood. For her, they revived the exploits of the ancestors Boasini, the dust of the combats, and the ardor of the thoroughbred horses, and headed with a heavy sense of burnt incense, she drew forces and vigor from the ancestral ashes. Stirred to the eclectic sound of the chorus, she summoned her brother. I need a child beside me, she said, to fill my heart. I want this child to be both my legs and my right arm. I am growing old. I will make of this child another me. Since the marriage of my own children, the house has been empty. She was thinking of you, working out her vengeance, but was very careful not to speak of you, of her hatred for you. Let your wish be fulfilled, replied Fabadiov. I have never asked you to educate any of my daughters, not wanting to tire you. Yet, today's children are difficult to keep in check. Take young Nabu, your namesake. She is yours. I asked only for her bones. Satisfied, Auntie Nabu packed her suitcase again, filled her basket with all that could be found in the village and is dear in town: dried couscous, roasted groundnut paste, millet, eggs, milk, chicken. Holding young Nabu's hand firmly in her right hand, she took the road back to town. So long a letter. Chapter 12. As she handed me back my suitcase, Auntie Nabu introduced young Nabu to me. She also introduced her at the homes of all her friends. With my help, young Nabu was admitted into the French school. Maturing her aunt's protective shade, she learned the secret of making delicious sauces, of using the iron, and wielding a pistol. Her aunt never missed any opportunity to remind her of her royal origin and taught her that the first quality in a woman is docility. After obtaining her primary school certificate and after a few years in secondary school, the older Nabu advised her niece to sit the entrance examination for the State School of Midwifery. This school is good. You receive an education there. No gallants for head. Young sober girls without earrings, dressed in white, which is the color of purity. The profession you will learn there is a beautiful one. You will earn your living, and you will acquire grace for your entry into paradise by helping at the birth of new followers of Muhammad, the Prophet. To tell you the truth, a woman does not need too much education. In fact, I wonder how a woman can earn a living by talking from morning to night. Thus, young Nabu became a midwife. One fine day, Auntie Nabu called Maudu and said to him, My brother Faba has given you young Nabu to be your wife, to thank me for the worthy way in which I have brought her up. I will never get over it if you don't take her as your wife. Shame kills faster than disease. I knew about it. Maudu knew about it. The whole town knew about it. You, I said to, suspected nothing and continued to be radiant. And because his mother had fixed a date for the wedding night, Maudu finally had the courage to tell you what every woman was whispering. You had a co-wife. My mother is old. The knocks and disappointments of life have weakened her heart. If I spend this child, she would die. This is a doctor speaking, and not the son. Think of it. Her brother's daughter, brought up by her, rejected by her son. What shame before society! It was so as not to see his mother die of shame and chagrin that Maudu agreed to go to the rendezvous of the wedding night. Faced with this frigid mother, molded by old morality, burning with the fierce ardor of antiquated laws, what could Maudu do? He was getting on in years, worn out by his arduous work, and then, did he really want to fight? To make a gesture of resistance? Young Nabu was so tempting. From then on, you no longer counted. What of the time and the love you had invested in your home? Only trifles, quickly forgotten. Your sons? They counted very little. And this reconciliation between a mother and her one and only man, you no longer counted, any more than did your 4 sons. They could never be equal to young Nabu's sons. The Grier spoke of young Nabu's sons, exalting them. Blood has returned to its source. Your sons did not count. Maudu's mother, a princess, could not recognize herself in the sons of a goldsmith's daughter. In any case, could a goldsmith's daughter have any dignity, any honor? This was tantamount to asking whether you had a heart and flesh. Ah, for some people, the honor and chagrin of a goldsmith's daughter counts for less, much less than the honor and chagrin of a Galibo. Maudo did not drive you away. He did his duty and wished that you would stay on. Young Nabu will continue to live with his mother. It was you he loved. Every other night, he will go to his mother's place to see his other wife, so that his mother would not die to fulfill a duty. How much greater you prove to be than those who sapped your happiness. You were advised to compromise. You don't burn a tree which bears the fruit. You were threatened through your flesh. Boys cannot succeed without their father. You took no notice. This commonplace truth, which before had lowered the heads of many wives as they raised them in revolt, did not produce the desired miracle. They did not divert you from your decision. You chose to make a break, a one-way journey with your four sons, leaving this letter for Maudu in clear view on the bed that used to be yours. I remember the exact words. Maudu, princes master their feelings to fulfill their duties. Others bend their heads and in silence accept a destiny that oppresses them. That, briefly put, is the internal ordering of our society. With its absurd divisions, I will not yield to it. I cannot accept what you are offering me today in place of the love we once had. You want to draw a line between heartfelt love and physical love. I say that there can be no union of bodies without the heart's acceptance, however little that may be. If you can procreate without loving, merely to satisfy the pride of your declining mother, then I find you despicable. At that moment, you tumble from the highest rag of respect on which I have always placed you. Your reasoning, which makes a distinction, is unacceptable to me. On one side, me, your life, your love, your choice. On the other, young Nabu, to be tolerated for reasons of duty. Maudu, man is one. Greatness and animal fuse together. None of his acts is pure charity. None is pure bestiality. I am stripping myself of your love, your name, clothed with my dignity, the only worthy garment. I go my way. Goodbye. I settle. And you left. You had a surprising courage to take your life into your hands. You rented a house and set up home there. And instead of looking backwards, you looked resolutely to the future. You set yourself a difficult task. And more than just my presence and encouragement, books saved you. Having become your refuge, they sustained you. The power of books, this marvelous intervention of astute human intelligence, various signs associated with sound, different sounds that form the word, juxtapositions of words from which springs the idea, thoughts, history, science, life, sole instruments of the interrelationship of culture, unparalleled means of giving and receiving. Books knit generations together in the same continuing effort that leads to progress. They enabled you to better yourself. What society refused you, they granted. Examination sat and passed, took you also to France, the school of interpreters, from which you graduated, led to your appointment into the Senegalese embassy in the United States. You make a very good living. You are developing in peace, as your letters tell me. Your back resolutely turned on those seeking light enjoyment and easy relationships. And Maudo, he renewed his relationship with his family. Those from Diakoi invaded his house. Those from Diakoi sustained young Nabu. But, and Maudo knew it, there was no possible comparison between yourself and young Nabu. You, so beautiful and so gentle. You, whose tenderness for him was so deep and disinterested. You, who knew how to mop your husband's brow. You, who could always find the right words with which to make him relax. And Maudo? What didn't he say? I am completely disoriented. You can't change the habits of a grown man. I look for shirts and trousers in all places, and I touch only emptiness. I had no pity for Maudo. My house is a suburb of Diakoi. I find it impossible to get any rest there. Everything there is dirty. Young Nabu gives my food and my clothing away to visitors. I did not listen to Maudo. Somebody told me he has seen you with Aisetu yesterday. Is it true? Is she around? How is she? How about my sons? I did not answer Maudo. For Maudo, and through him, all men, remained an enigma to me. Your departure had truly shaken him. His sadness was clearly evident. When he spoke of you, the inflections in his voice hardened, but his disillusioned air, the bitter criticisms of his home, his wit, which railed at everything, did not in the least prevent the periodic swelling of young Nabu's belly. Two boys had already been born. When faced with this visible fact, proof of his intimate relationship with young Nabu, Maudu would twist with anger. His look was like a whip. Look here, don't be an idiot. How can you expect a man to remain a stone when he is constantly in contact with a woman who runs his house? He added as illustration, I saw a film in which the survivors of an air crash survived by eating the flesh of the corpses. This fact demonstrates the forces of the instincts in man, instincts that dominate him regardless of his level of intelligence. Slough off this surface of dreamy sentimentality. Accept reality in its crude ugliness. You can't resist the imperious laws that demand food and clothing for man. These same laws compel the male in other respects. I say male to emphasize the bestiality of instinct. You understand? A wife must understand once and for all and must forgive. She must not worry about betrayals of the flesh. The important thing is what is there in the heart. That's what unites two beings inside. He struck his chest at that point where the heart lies. Driven to the limits of my resistance, I satisfy myself with what is within reach. It's a terrible thing to say. Truth is ugly when one analyzes it. Thus, to justify himself, he reduced young Nabu to a plate of food. Thus, for the sake of variety, men are unfaithful to their wives. I was irritated. He was asking me to understand. But to understand what? The supremacy of instinct? The right to betray? The justification of desire for variety? I could not be an ally to polygamic instincts. What then was I to understand? How I envied your calmness during your last visit. There you were, rid of the marks of suffering. Your sons were growing up well, contrary to all predictions. You did not care about Maudu. Yes, indeed, there you were. The past crashed beneath your heel. There you were, an innocent victim of an unjust cost and the courageous pioneer of a new life. So long a letter. Chapter 13. My own crisis came 3 years after your own. But unlike in your case, the source of mine was not my family in-law. The problem was rooted in Modo himself, my husband. My daughter Daba, who was preparing for a baccalaureate, often brought some of her classmates home with her. Most of the time, it was the same young girl, a bit shy, frail, made noticeably uncomfortable by our style of life. But she was really beautiful in her adolescent period. In her faded but clean clothing, her beauty shone, pure. Her shapely contours could not but be noticed. I sometimes noticed that Mulder was interested in the pair. Neither was I worried when I heard him suggest that he should take Benito home in the car, because it was getting late, he would say. Benito was going through a metamorphosis. However, she was now wearing very expensive off-the-peg dresses. Smilingly, she would explain to my daughter, Oh, I have a sugar daddy who pays for them. Then one day, on her return from school, Daba confided in me that Benito had a serious problem. The sugar daddy of the boutique dresses wants to marry Benito. Just imagine, her parents want to withdraw her from school, with only a few months to go before the back, to marry her off to the sugar daddy. Advise her to refuse, I said. And if the man in question offers her a villa, Mecca for her parents, a car, a monthly salary, jewels, none of that is worth the capital of youth. I agree with you, Mom. I'll tell Benito not to give in. But her mother is a woman who wants so much to escape from mediocrity and who regrets so much her past beauty, faded in the smoke of the wood fires, that she looks enviously at everything I wear. She complains all day long. What is important is Benito herself. She must not give in. And then, a few days afterwards, Daba renewed the conversation. with a surprising conclusion. Mom, Benito is broken. She is going to marry her sugar daddy. Her mom cried so much. She begged her daughter to give her life a happy end in a proper house as the man has promised them, so she accepted. When is the wedding? This coming Sunday, but there will be no reception. Benito cannot bear the mockery of her friends. And in the evening of this same Sunday, on which Benito was being married off, I saw come into my house, all dressed up and solemn, Tamsir, mother's brother, with Mauduba and his local imam. Where had they come from, looking so awkward in their starched bubbles? Doubtless, they had come looking for Maudu to carry out an important task that one of them had been charged with. I told them that Maudu had been out since morning. They entered laughing, deliberately sniffing the fragrant odor of incense that was floating on the air. I sat in front of them, laughing with them. The Imam attacked. There is nothing one can do when Allah the Almighty puts two people side by side. True, true, said the other two people in support. A pause. He took a breath and continued. There is nothing new in this world. True, true, Tamsir and Maudu chimed in again. Some things you may find to be sad are much less so than others. I followed the movement of the naughty lips that led forth these axioms, which can precede the announcement of either a happy event or an unhappy one. What was he leading up to with these preliminaries that rather announced a storm? So their visit was obviously planned. Does one announce bad news dressed up like that in one Sunday best? Or did they want to inspire confidence with their impeccable dress? I thought of the absent one. I asked with a cry of a hunted beast. Modo. And the Imam, who had finally got hold of a leading thread, held tightly onto it. He went on quickly, as if the words were glowing embers in his mouth. Yes, yes, Modo fall. But happily, he is alive for you, for all of us. Thanks be to God. All he has done is to marry a second wife today. We have just come from the mosque in Grand Dakar, where the marriage took place. The tone, thus, removed from the way, Tamsir ventured. Modu sends his thanks. He says it is fate that decides men and things. God intended him to have a second wife. There is nothing he can do about it. He praises you for the quarter of a century of marriage in which you gave him all the happiness a wife owes her husband. His family, especially myself, his elder brother, thanks you. You have always held us in respect. You know that we are Modu's blood. Afterwards, there were the same old words which were intended to relieve the situation. You are the only one in your house, no matter how big it is, no matter how dear life is. You are the first wife, a mother for Modu, a friend for Modu. Tamsir's Adam's apple danced about in his throat. He shook his left leg, crossed over his unfolded right leg. His shoes, white Turkish slippers, were covered with a thin layer of red dust, the color of the earth in which they had walked. The same dust covered Maudu's and the Imam's shoes. Maudu said nothing. He was reliving his own experience. He was thinking of your letter, your reaction, and you and I were so alike. He was being worried. He kept his head lowered, in an attitude of those who accept defeat before the battle. I acquiesced under the drops of poison that were burning in me. A quarter of a century of marriage, a wife unparalleled. I counted backwards to determine where the break of the thread had occurred, from which everything had unwound. My mother's words came back to me. Too perfect. I completed at last my mother's thought with the end of the dictum. To be honest, I thought of the first two incisors with a wide gap between them, the sign of the primacy of love in the individual. I thought of his absence all day long. He has simply said, "Don't expect me for lunch." I thought of his other absences, quite frequent these days, crudely clarified today, yet well hidden under the guise of trade union meetings. He was also on a strict diet to break the stomach egg. He would say laughingly, this egg had announced old age. Every night when he went out, he would unfold and try on several suits before settling on one. The others, impatiently rejected, will slip on the floor. I will have to fold them again and put them back in their place. And this extra work I discovered I was doing only to help him in his effort to be elegant in the seduction of another woman. I forced myself to check my inner agitation. Above all, I must not give my visitors the pleasure of relating my distress. Smile, take the matter lightly, just as they announced it. Thank them for the humane way in which they had accomplished their mission. Send thanks to Mojo, a good father and a good husband. A husband, become a friend. Thank my family in law, the Imam, Maudo, smile, give them something to drink, see them out. Under the swells of incense that they were sniffing once again, shake their hands. How pleased they were, all except Maudo, who correctly judged the import of the event. So long a letter. Chapter 14. Alone at last, able to give free rein to my surprise and to gauge my distress. Ah, yes, I forgot to ask for my rival's name so that I can give a human form to my pain. Acquaintances from Grand Dakar came rushing to my house, bringing the various details of the ceremony. Some of them did so out of true friendship for me. Others were spiteful and jealous of the promotion Benito's mother would gain from the marriage. I don't understand. They did not understand either the entrance of Mudo, a personality, into this extremely poor family. Benito, a child the same age as my daughter Daba, promoted to the rank of my co-wife, whom I must face. Shy Benito, the old man who bought her the new off-the-peg dresses to replace the old faded ones, was none other than Mudo. She had innocently confided her secrets in her rival's daughter because she thought that this dream, sprung from a brain growing old, would never become reality. She had told everything: the villa, the monthly allowance, the offer of a future trip to Mecca for her parents, the thought that she was stronger than the man she was dealing with. She did not know Moodo's strong will, his tenacity before an obstacle, the pride he invested in winning, the resistance that inspires new attempts at each failure. Daba was furious, her pride wounded. She repeated all the nicknames Benito had given her father: Old Man, Pot Belly, Sugar Daddy. The person who gave her life had been daily ridiculed and he accepted it. The overwhelming anger raged inside Daba. She knew that her best friend was sincere in what she said, but what can a child do, faced with a furious mother shouting about hunger and a thirst to live? Benito, like many others, was a lamb slaughtered on the altar of affluence. Daba's anger increased as she analyzed the situation. Break with him, mother. Send this man away. He has respected neither you or me. Do what Auntie Aisatu did. Break away with him. Tell me you'll break with him. I can't see you fighting over a man with a girl my age. I told myself what every betrayed woman says. If Modo was milk, it was I who had all the cream. The rest, well, nothing but water with a vague smell of milk. But the final decision lay with me. With Modo absent all night, was he already consummating his marriage? The solitude that learned counsel enabled me to grasp the problem. Leave. Start again at zero. After living 25 years with one man, after having borne 12 children, did I have enough energy to bear alone the weight of this responsibility, which was both moral and material? Leave. Draw a clean line through the past. Turn over a page on which not everything was bright, certainly, but at least all was clear. What will now be recorded there will hold no love, confidence, grandeur, or hope. I have never known the sordid side of marriage, did get to know it, run from it. When one begins to forgive, there is an avalanche of faults that comes crashing down, and the only thing that remains is to forgive again, to keep on forgiving, leave, escape from betrayal, sleep without asking myself any question, without restraining my ear at the slightest noise, waiting for a husband I share. I counted the abandoned or divorced women of my generation whom I knew. I knew a few whose remaining beauty had been able to capture a worthy man, a man who added fine bearing to a good situation, and who was considered better, 100 times better than his predecessor. The misery that was the lot of this woman was rolled back with the invasion of new happiness that changed their lives, filled out their cheeks, brightened their eyes. I knew others who had lost all hope of renewal, and whose loneliness had very quickly laid at the ground. The play of destiny remains impenetrable. The courage that a female neighbor threw on the fan in front of me did not fill me with optimism. Neither did they remain face upwards, showing the black hollow that signifies laughter, nor when the grouping of white bags seemed to be saying that the man in the double trousers is coming towards me, the promise of wealth. The only thing that separates you from them, a man and wealth, is the arms of two white and red colonels. Add for Martha, my neighbor. She insists there is a saying that discord here may be lack elsewhere. Why are you afraid to make the break? A woman is like a ball. Once a ball is thrown, no one can predict where it will bounce. You have no control over where it rolls, and even less over who gets it. Often it is grabbed by an unexpected hand. Instead of listening to the reasoning of my neighbor, a grass woman who dreams of the generous tips due to the go-between, I look at myself in the mirror. My eyes soak in the mirror's eloquence. I had lost my slim figure, as well as ease and quickness of movement. My stomach protruded from beneath the wrapper that hid the calves, developed by the impressive number of kilometers walked since the beginning of my existence. Suckling had robbed my breast of their round firmness. I could not delude myself. Youth was deserting my body. Whereas the woman draws from the passing years the force of her devotion, despite aging of a companion, a man, on the other hand, restricts his field of tenderness. His egoistic eyes looks over his partner's shoulder. He compares what he had with what he no longer has, and what he has with what he could have. I had heard of too many misfortunes not to understand my own. There was your own case, I said to, the case of many other women, despised, relegated, or exchanged, who were abandoned like a worn out or outdated boo-boo. To overcome the stress when it sits upon you demands strong will. When one thinks that with each passing second one's life is shortened, one must profit intensely from this second. It is the sum of all the lost or harvested seconds that make for wasted or a successful life. Brace oneself to check despair and get into proportion. A nervous breakdown waits around the corner for anyone who lets himself to wallow in bitterness. Little by little, it takes over your whole being. Oh, nervous breakdown. Doctors speak of it in a detached, ironical way, emphasizing that the vital organs are in no way disturbed. You are lucky if they don't tell you that you are wasting their time with the overgrowing list of your illness, your head, throat, chest, heart, liver, that no x-ray can confirm. And yet, what atrocious suffering is caused by nervous breakdowns. And I think of Jacqueline, who suffered from one. Jacqueline, the Ivorian, had disobeyed her Protestant parents and had married Samba Diak, a contemporary of Mao de Bez, a doctor like him, who on leaving African School of Medicine and Pharmacy was posted to Abidjan. Jacqueline often came round to see us, since her husband often visited our household. Coming to Senegal, she found herself in a new world, a world with different reactions, temperaments, and mentality from that which she had grown up. In addition, her husband's relatives, always the relatives, were cool towards her because she refused to adopt the Muslim religion and went instead the Protestant church every Sunday. A black African, she should have been able to fit without difficulty into an African society. Senegal and Ivory Coast both having experienced the same colonial power, but Africa is diverse, divided. The same country can change its character and outlook several times over, from north to south and from east to west. Jacqueline truly wanted to become Senegalese, but the mockery checked all desire in her to cooperate. People called her Nag, and she finally understood the meaning of this nickname that revolted her soul. Her husband was making up lost time, spent his time chasing slender Senegalese women, as he would say with appreciation, and did not bother to hide his adventures, respecting neither his wife nor his children. His lack of precaution brought to Jacqueline's knowledge the irrefutable proof of his misconduct. Love notes, checks start bearing the names of the payees, bills from restaurants, and for hotel rooms. Jacqueline cried, Samba Diak, lift it up. Jacqueline lost weight. Samba Diak was still living fast. Jacqueline complained of a disturbing lump in her chest under her left breast. She said she had the impression that a sharp point had pierced her there and was cutting through the flesh right to her very bone. She fretted. Mauldin listened to her heart. Nothing wrong there, he would say. He prescribed some tranquilizers. Eagerly, Jacqueline took the tablets, tortured by the insidious pain. The bottle empty, she noticed that the lamp remained in the same place. She continued to feel the pain, just as acutely as ever. She consulted a doctor from her own country, who ordered an electrocardiogram and various blood tests. Nothing to be learned from the electric region of the heart, nothing abnormal found in the blood. He too prescribed tranquilizers, big effervescent tablets that could only allay poor Jacqueline's distress. She thought of her parents, of their refusal to consent to her marriage. She wrote to them a pathetic letter in which she begged for their forgiveness. They sent their sincere blessing, but could do nothing to lighten the strange weight in her chest. Jacqueline was taken to Fan Hospital on the road to Wakam, near the university, where the medical students do their internship, as they do at the Aristal de Dantec Hospital. This hospital did not exist at the time Maudubai and Sambatia studied at the School of Medicine and Pharmacy. It has many departments, housed either in separate buildings or in adjoining ones to facilitate communication. These buildings, despite their number and size, do not manage to fill up the hospital's vast ground. On entering it, Jacqueline thought of those gone mad, confined inside. It was necessary to explain to her that the mad ones were in psychiatric care, and that here they were called the mentally sick, and in any case were not violent, the violent ones being confined in the psychiatric hospital at Tiarori. Jacqueline was in a neurology ward, and those of us who went to visit her learned that the hospital had departments for treating tuberculosis and infectious diseases. Jacqueline lay prostrate in a bed, her beautiful but neglected black hair, through which no comb had been run ever since she began consulting doctor after doctor, formed shaggy tufts on her head. When the scarf protecting it slipped out of place, it would uncover the coating of a mixture of roots that were poured on her, for we tried everything to draw this sister out of a private hell. And it was your mother, Aisatu, who went to consult the native medicine men for us and brought back Safara from a visit and directions for the sacrifices you quickly carried out. Jacqueline's thoughts turned to death. She waited for it, frightened and tormented, her hand on her chest, where the tenacious invisible lamp foiled all the ruses, scowled maliciously at all the tranquilizers. Jacqueline's roommate was a French technical corporation teacher of literature, posted to the Lycée Federherbe in St. Louis. The only thing she knew of St. Louis, she said, was the bridge that spanned the river. A sore throat, an infliction as sudden as it was violent, had prevented her from taking up her duties and had brought her here, where she was waiting to be repatriated. I observed her often, old for her unmarried status, thin, angular even, without any charm. Her studies must have been her only form of recreation during her youth. Sour-tempered, she must have put off any passionate advances. It was perhaps her loneliness that had made her to seek for a change. A teaching post in Senegal must have corresponded to her dreams of escape. She had come therefore, but all her frustrated dreams, all her disappointed hopes, all her crushed revolt connived to attack her throat, protected by a navy blue scarf with white dots, which contrasted with the paleness of her chest. The medication with which her throat was painted gave a bluish tint to her thin lips. She had big luminous blue eyes, the only light the only point of beauty, the only heavenly grace in her ungracious face. She tapped against her throat. Jacqueline tapped against her chest. We would laugh at their ways, especially when the patient from the next door came to chat. As she said, she would uncover her bag for the refreshing caress of the air conditioner. She suffered from sudden flashes, which burned her terribly at this spot. Strange and varied manifestations of neurovegetative dystonia. Doctors, beware, especially if you are a neurologist or a psychiatrist. Often, the pains we are told of have their roots in moral torment, vegetation suffered and constant frustrations. These are what accumulate somewhere in the body and choke it. Jacqueline, who enjoyed life, bravely endured blood test after blood test, another electrocardiogram, another x-ray of the lungs. An electroencephalogram was carried out, which revealed traces of her suffering. It then became necessary to do a gaseous electroencephalography. This is extremely painful, always entailing a lumbar puncture. That day, Jacqueline remained confined to bed, looking more pitiful and haggard than ever before. Samba Diak was kind and touched by his wife's breakdown. One fine day, after a month of treatment, intravenous injections and tranquilizers, after a month of investigation, during which her French neighbor had returned to her country, the doctor who was the head of the neurology department asked to see Jacqueline. She found in front of her a man whom maturity and the nobility of his job had made even more attractive, a man who had not been hardened by constant dealing with most deplorable of miseries, that of mental alienation. With his sharp eyes, accustomed to judging, he looked into those of Jacqueline in order to discover in her soul the source of the distress disrupting her organism. In a soft, reassuring voice, which in itself was a balm to this overstrung being, he explained, Madame Diak, I assure you that there is nothing at all wrong with your head. The x-rays have shown nothing, and neither have the blood tests. The problem is that you are depressed. That is it. Not happy. You wish the conditions of your life were different from what they are in reality, and this is what is torturing you. Moreover, you had your babies too soon after each other. The body loses its vital juices, which haven't had time to be replaced. In short, there is nothing endangering your life. You must react. Go out. Give yourself a reason for living. Take courage. Slowly, you will overcome. We will give you a series of short treatments with cure to relax you. You can leave afterwards. The doctor punctuated his words by nodding his head and smiling convincingly, giving Jacqueline much hope. Reanimated, she related the discussion to us and confided that she had left the interview already half cured. She knew the heart of her illness and would fight against it. She was morally upright. She had come a long way, had Jacqueline. Why did I recall this friend's ordeal? Was it because of its happy ending, or merely to delay the formation of the choice I had to make? A choice that my reason rejected, but that accorded with the immense tenderness I felt towards Mordefall. Yes, I was well aware of where the right solution lay, the dignified solution, and, to my family's great surprise, unanimously disapproved by my children, who were under their best influence, I chose to remain. Mudu and Maudu were surprised, could not understand. Forewarned, you, my friend, did not try to dissuade me. Respectful of my new choice of life, I cried every day. From then on, my life changed. I had prepared myself for equal sharing, according to the precepts of Islam concerning polygamic life. I was left with empty hands. My children, who disagreed with my decision, sulked. In opposition to me, they represented a majority I had to respect. You have not finished suffering, predicted Daba. I lived in a vacuum, and Modu avoided me, attempts by friends and family to bring me back to the foolproof futile. One of the new couple neighbors explained to me that the child would go a quiver each time Modu said my name or showed any desire to see his children. He never came again. His newfound happiness gradually swallowed up his memory of us. he forgot about us. So long a letter. Chapter 15. I said to my dear friend, I've told you that there can be no possible comparison between you and young Nabu, but I also realized that there can be no possible comparison between young Nabu and Benito. Young Nabu grew up beside her aunt, who had earmarked her as the spouse of her son Mautu. Used to seeing him, she let herself be drawn towards him, naturally, without any shock. His grey hair did not offend her. She found his thickening features reassuring. And then she loved him and still loves Maudu, even if their interests are not always the same. School had not left a strong mark on young Nabu, preceded and dominated as it was by the strength of the character of Auntie Nabu, who, in her rage for vengeance, had left nothing to chance in the education she gave her niece. It was especially while telling folktales late at night under the starlit sky that Auntie Nabu wielded her power over young Nabu's soul. Her expressive soul glorified the retributive violence of the warriors. Her expressive voice lamented the anxiety of the loved one. All submissive, she saluted the courage of the reckless. She stigmatized the trickery, laziness, calumny. She demanded care of the orphan and respect for old age. Tales with animal characters, nostalgic songs kept young Nabu breathless, and slowly but surely, through the sheer force of repetition, the virtues of greatness of race took root in this child. This kind of oral education, easily assimilated, full of charm, has the power to bring out the best in the adult's mind, develop in its contact with it. Softness and generosity, docility and politeness, poise and tact, all these qualities made young Nabu pleasant. Maury used to call her finicky with a shrug of his shoulder. And then, young Nabu had a profession. She had no time to worry about the state of mind. In charge of frequent shifts at the Repose Mandel Maternal Home, on the outskirts of the crowded and badly serviced suburb areas, all day and several times over, she will go through the same gestures engendering life. Babies passed again and again between her expert hands. She will come back from work railing at the lack of beds that led to the discharge too early in her opinion, of the newborn mothers worried about the lack of staff, inadequate instruments, medicines. She will say with deep concern, the fragile baby is let loose too quickly into a hygienically unsound social environment. She thought of the great rate of infant mortality, which nights of care and devotion cannot decrease. She thought, what a thrilling adventure it is to turn a baby into a healthy man, but how many mothers are able to accomplish that feat? In the midst of life, in the midst of poverty, in the midst of ugliness, young Nabu will often triumph with her knowledge and experience, but she knew sometimes, heart-rending failure, she remained powerless, faced with the force of death. Young Nabu, responsible and aware, like you, like me, even though she is not my friend, we often share the same problems. She found life hard, and being a fighter, had no the least of inclination for frivolities. As for Benito, she had grown up in complete liberty in an environment where survival was of the essence. Her mother was more concerned with putting the pot on the boil than with education. Beautiful, lively, kind-hearted, intelligent, Benito had access to many of her friends' well-off families and was sharply aware of what she was sacrificing by her marriage. A victim, she wanted to be the oppressor. Exiled in the world of adults, which was not her own, she wanted a prison gilded. Demanding, she tormented. Sold, she raised her price daily. What she renounced, those things which before used to be the sap of her life, and which will bitterly enumerate, called for exorbitant compensation, which Modo exhausted himself trying to provide. Echoes of her life will reach me, amplified or muted, according to the visitor. The seductive power of mature age, of slavery temples, was unknown to Benito, and Modo would dye his hair every month, his waistline painfully restrained by old-fashioned trousers. Benito would never miss a chance of laughing wickedly at him. Modo would leave himself winded, trying to imprison youth in its decline, which abandoned him on all sides. The graceless sap of a double chin, the gait hastened and heavy at the slightest cool breeze. Gracefulness and beauty surrounded him. He was afraid of disappointing, and so that there would be no time for close scrutiny of him. He would create daily celebrations, during which a bright young thing would move, and aim for slender arms, who with a laughter could make a life beautiful, or with a pout bring sadness. People talk of bewitchment. With determination, friends begged me to react. You are letting someone pluck the fruits of your labor. Vehemently, they recommended marabouts, sure in their science, who had proved themselves by bringing husbands back to the fold, by separating them from evil women. These charlatans lived far away. Casamance was mentioned, where the Diola and Majago excel in magic philtres. They suggested Linger, the country of Falba, quick in vengeance through charms, as through arms. They also talk of Mali, the country of Bambara, with faces deeply scarred with tribal marks. To act as I was urged would have been to call myself to question. I was already reproaching myself for a weakness that had not prevented the degradation of my home. Was I to deny myself because Modo has chosen another path? No, I will not give in to the pleasure. My mind and my fate rejected supernatural power. They rejected this easy attraction, which kills any will to fight. I looked reality in the face. Reality had the face of Lady Mother-in-law, swallowing up double mouthful from the trough offered her. Her hunch about a gilded way of life was being proved right. Her unsteady heart with zinc walls covered with magazine pages were pimped up, and advertisements were placed side by side, had grown dim in her memory. One motion of her hand in the bathroom, and delicious jets of hot water will massage her back. Another in the kitchen, an ice cube to cool the water in a glass. One more, and a flame will spring from the gas cooker, and she'll prepare herself a delicious omelette. The senior wife hitherto neglected, Lady Mother-in-law, emerged from the shadows and took her unfaithful husband back in tow. She held valuable trump cards, grilled meats, roasted chicken, and, why not, banknotes slipped into the pockets of the bubu hanging in the bedroom. She no longer counted the loss of water bought from the Tukulu hawker of the vital liquid drawn from the springs. Having known poverty, she rejoiced in her newfound happiness. Modo fulfilled their expectations. He will thoughtfully send her words of note to spend and will offer her after his trips abroad jewelry and rich baubles. From then on, she joined the category of women with heavy bracelets lauded by the griots. Thrilled, she would listen to the radio transmitting songs dedicated to her. Her family reserved the best place for her during ceremonies and listened to her advice. When Modo's large car dropped her and she emerged, there would be a rush of outstretched arms into which she placed her banknotes. Reality was in Benito, who went from ninth club to ninth club. She would arrive draped in a long costly garment, a gold belt, a present from Modu on the birth of their first child, shining round her waist. Her shoe tapped on the ground, announcing her presence. The waiters would move aside and bow respectively in the hope of a royal tip. With a contemptuous look, she would look at those already seated. With a pout, like that of a spoiled child, she would indicate to Modu the table she had chosen. With a wave of her hand, like a magician, she would have various bottles lined up. She was showing off to the young people and wanted to impress them with her form of success. Benito, incontestably beautiful and desirable, bewitching, people admitted. But when the moment of admiration passed, she was the one who lowered her head at the sight of couples, graced with nothing but their youth, and rich in their happiness alone. The couples held each other or danced apart, depending on the music, sometimes slow and coaxing, sometimes vigorous and wild. When the trumpets bled out, backed by the frenzy of the drums, the young dancers, excited and untiring, would stamp, jump, and caper about, shouting their joy. Mother would try to follow suit. The harsh lies betrayed into the unpitying sarcasm of some of them, who called them cradle snatcher. What did it matter? He had Benito in his arms. He was happy. Worn out, Benito would watch with disillusioned eyes the progress of her friends. The image of a life which she had murdered broke her heart. Sometimes also, despite my disapproval, Daba would go to the nightclubs, dressed simply. She would appear on her fiancé's arms. She would arrive late on purpose so as to sit in full view of her father. It was a ghostly confrontation. On one side, an ill-assorted couple. On the other, two well-matched people. And the evening created an extreme tension that opposed two former friends, a father and his daughter, a son-in-law and his father-in-law. So long a letter. Chapter 16. I was surviving. In addition to my former duties, I took over models as well. The purchase of the basic foodstuffs kept me occupied at the end of the month. I made sure that I was never short of tomatoes or of oil, potatoes, or onions during the periods when they became rare in the markets. I stored bags of Siam rice, much loved by the Senegalese. My brain was taxed by new financial gymnastics. The last date for payment of electricity bill and of water rates demanded my attention. I was often the only woman in the queue. Replacing the locks and latches of broken doors, replacing broken windows was a bother, as well as looking for a plumber to deal with broken sinks. My son, Mauduful, complained about burnt out bulbs that needed replacement. I survived. I overcame my shyness at going alone to cinemas. I would take a seat with less and less embarrassment as the months went by. People stared at a middle aged lady without a partner. I would feign indifference while anger hammered against my nerves and the tears I held back welled up behind my eyes. From the surprised look, I gauged a slender liberty granted to women. The yearly shows at the cinema filled me with delight. They gave me the courage to meet the curious gaze of various people. They did not keep me away for long from my children. What a great distraction from the stress is the cinema. Intellectual films, those with a message, sentimental films, detective films, comedies, thrillers, all these were my companions. I learned from them lessons of greatness, courage, and perseverance. They deepened and widened my vision of the world, thanks to their cultural value. The cinema, an inexpensive means of recreation, can thus give healthy pleasure. I survived. The more I thought about it, the more grateful I became to Modo for having cut off all contact. I had a solution my children wanted, the break without having to take the initiative. The lie had not taken root. Modo was excising me from his life and was proving it by their unequivocal attitude. What do other husbands do? They wallow in indecision. They force themselves to be present where neither their feelings nor their interests continue to reside. Nothing impresses them in their home. The wife all dressed up, the son full of tenderness, the meal tastefully served. They remain stolid, like marble. They wish only that the hours may pass rapidly. At night, feigning fatigue or illness, they snore deeply. How quick they are to greet the liberating daybreak, which puts an end to their torment. I was not deceived. Therefore, I no longer interested Modo, and I knew it. I was abandoned, a flattering leaf that no hands would dare to pick, as my grandmother would have said. I faced up to the situation bravely. I carried out my duties. They filled the time and channeled my thoughts. But my loneliness would emerge at night, burdensome. One does not easily undo the tenuous ties that bind two people together during a journey fraught with hardship. I live the proof of it, bringing back to life past scenes, past conversations. Our common habits sprang up at their usual times. I missed dreadfully our nightly conversations. I missed our bouts of refreshing, all understanding laughter. Like opium, I missed our daily consultations. I pitted myself against shadows. The wandering of my thoughts chased away all sleep. I sidestepped my pain in a refusal to fight it. The continuity of radio broadcasts was a great relief. I gave the radio the role of comforter. At night, the music lulled my anxiety. I heard a message of old and new songs, which awakened hope. My sadness dissolved. With all the force I had, I called eagerly to another man to replace Modo. Distress and awakening succeeded the night. My love for my children sustained me. They were a pillar. I owed them help and affection. Did Modo appreciate, in its full measure, the void created by his absence in this house? Did Modo attribute to me more energy than I had to shoulder the responsibilities of my children? I adopted a sprightly tone to rouse my battalion. The coffee warmed the atmosphere, exuding a sweet fragrance, foaming baths, mutual teasing and laughter, a few days and increased efforts, a new day, and waiting. Waiting for what? It will not be easy to get my children to accept a new masculine presence, having condemned their father. Could they be tolerant toward another man? Besides, what man will have the courage to face 12 pairs of hostile eyes which openly tear you apart? Waiting? But waiting for what? I was not divorced. I was abandoned, a flattering leaf that no hands dared to pick, as my grandmother would have said. I survived. I experienced the inadequacy of public transport. My children laugh at themselves in making this harsh discovery. One day, I heard Abba advise them. Above all, don't let mom know that it is stifling in those buses during the rush hours. I shared tears of joy and sadness together. Joy in being loved by my children, the sadness of a mother who does not have the means to change the course of events. I told you then, without any ulterior motive, of this painful aspect of our life, while Modo's car drove Lady Mother-in-law to the four corners of town, and while Benito streaked along the roads of Alfa Romeo. I shall never forget your response, you my sister, nor my joy and surprise when I was called by the Fiat agency and was told to choose a car which you had paid for in full. My children gave cries of joy when they learned of the approaching end of their tribulation, which remained the daily lot of a good many other students. Friendship has splendors that love knows not. It grows stronger when crossed, whereas obstacles kill love. Friendship resists time, which worries in severe couples. It has heights unknown to love. You, the goldsmith's daughter, gave me your help while depriving yourself, and I learned to drive, stifling my fear. The narrow space between the wheel and the seat was mine. The flattened cloth gilded in the gears, the brake reduced by the forward thrust, and to speed along, I had to step on the accelerator. I did not trust the accelerator. At the slightest pressure from my feet, the car lurched forward. My feet learned to dance over the pedestals. Whenever I was discouraged, I would say, why should Benito sit behind a wheel and not I? I would tell myself, don't disappoint I settle. I won this battle of nerves and sack Freud. I obtained my driving license and told you about it. I told you, and now my children in the back seat of the cream-colored Fiat 125. Thanks to you, my children can look the affluent mother-in-law and the fragile child in the eye of the streets of the town. Modo surprised, unbelieving, inquired into the source of the car. He never accepted the true story. Like Maudo's mother, he too believed that a goldsmith's daughter had no heart. So long a letter. Chapter 17. I take a deep breath. I've related at one go your story as well as mine. I've said the essential. For pain, even when it's past, leaves the same mark on the individual when recalled. Your disappointment was mine, as my rejection was yours. Forgive me once again if I have reopened your wound. Mine continues to bleed. You may tell me the path of life is not smooth. One is bruised by its sharp edges. I also know that marriage is never smooth. I reflect differences in character and capacity for feeling. In one couple, the man may be the victim of a fickle woman, or of a woman shut up in her own preoccupations, who rejects all dialogues and quashes all moves towards tenderness. In another couple, alcoholism is a leprosy that gnaws away at health, wealth, and peace. It shows up an individual's disordered states through ghostic spectacles by which his dignity is undermined. In situations where physical blows were solid arguments and the menacing blade of a knife an irresistible call for silence. With others, it is the lure of easy gain that dominates. Incorrigible players at the gaming table or seated at the shade of a tree. The heated atmosphere of rooms full of fiendish odor, the distorted faces of tense players, the giddy whirl of playing cards swallowed up time, wealth, conscience, and starts only with the last breath of the person accustomed to shuffling them. I tried to spot my faults in the failure of my marriage. I gave freely, gave more than I received. I am one of those who can realize themselves fully and bloom only when they are part of a couple. Even though I understand your stand, even though I respect the choice of liberated women, I have never conceived of happiness outside marriage. I love my house. You can testify to the fact that I made it a haven of peace where everything had its place. That I created a harmonious symphony of colors. You know how soft hearted I am, how much I loved Mojo. You can testify to the fact that, mobilized day and night in his service, I anticipated his slightest desire. I made peace with his family, despite his desertion of our home. His father and mother, and Tamsir, his brother, still continued to visit me often, as did his sisters. My children too grew up without much ado. Their success at school was my pride, just like Laura's, trolled at the feet of my lord and master. And Modo was no prisoner. He spent his time as he wished. I well understood his desire to let off steam. He fulfilled himself outside, as he wished in his trade union activities. I was trying to pinpoint any weakness in the way I conducted myself. My social life has been stormy and perhaps injured Modo's trade union career. Can a man, deceived and flaunted by his family, impose himself on others? Can a man, whose wife does not do her job well, honestly demand a fair reward for labor? Aggression and condescension in a woman rouse contempt and hatred for a husband. If she is gracious, even without appealing to any ideology, she can summon support for any action. In a word, a man's success depends on feminine support. And I ask myself why? Why did Mudo detach himself? Why did he put Benito between us? You, very logically, may reply, affection springs from nothing. Sometimes a grimace, the courage of a head, can seduce a heart and keep it. I ask myself questions. The truth is that, despite everything, I remain faithful to the love of my youth. I settle, I cry for Moto, and I can do nothing about it. So long a letter. Chapter 18. Yesterday I celebrated, as is the custom, the 40th day of Modo's death. I have forgiven him. May God hear the prayer I say for him every day. I celebrated the 40th day in meditation. The initiated read the Quran. Their fervent voices rose towards heaven. Modo fall. May God accept you among his chosen few. After going through the motions of pity, Tamsil came and sat in my bedroom in the blue chair that used to be your favorite, sticking his head outside. He signaled to Maldo. He also signaled to the Imam from the mosque in his area. The Imam and Maldo joined him. This time, Tamsil speaks. There is a striking resemblance between Modu and Tamsil. The same text, donated by the inexplicable law of heredity. Tamsil speaks with great assurance. He touches once again on my years of marriage. Then he concludes, when you have come out, that is to say, of mourning, I shall marry you. You suit me as a wife, and further, you will continue to live here, just as if Modu were not dead. Usually, it is the younger brother who inherits his elder brother's wife. In this case, it is the opposite. You are my good luck. I shall marry you. I prefer you to the other one. Too frivolous, too young. I advise Modu against that marriage. What a declaration of love, full of conceit, and a house still in mourning. What assurance and calm aplomb. I looked him still straight in the eye. I look at Maudo. I look at the Imam. I draw my black shawl closer. I tell my beads. This time I shall speak out. My voice had known 30 years of silence, 30 years of harassment. It burst out, violent, sometimes sarcastic, sometimes contemptuous. Did you ever have any affection for your brother? Already, you want to build a new home for yourself over a body that is still warm. While we are praying for Moto, you are thinking of future wedding festivities. Ah, yes, your strategy is to get in before any suitor, to get in before Maudu. your faithful friend, who has more qualities than you, and who also, according to custom, can inherit the wife. You forgot that I have a heart, a mind, that I am not an object to be passed from hand to hand. You don't know what marriage means to me. It is an act of faith and of love, the total surrender of oneself to the person one has chosen, and who has chosen you. I emphasize the word chosen. What of your wives, Tamsir? Your income can meet neither their needs nor those of their numerous children. To help you out with your financial obligations, one of your wife dies, another sells fruit, the third untiringly turns the handles of a sewing machine. You, the revered Lord, you take it easy, obeyed at the crook of a finger. I shall never be the one to complete your collection. My house shall never be for you the coveted oasis. No extra burden. My turn every day, cleanliness and luxury, abundance and calm. No tamsil. And then there are Dabai and her husband who have demonstrated their financial acumen by buying all your brother's properties. What promotion for you! Your friends are going to look at you with envy in their eyes. Mauro signaled with his hand for me to stop. Shut up! Shut up! Stop! Stop! But you can't stop once you have let your anger loose. I concluded, more violent than ever. Tamsil, purge yourself of your dreams of conquest. They have lasted 40 days. I shall never be your wife. The Imam prayed God to be his witness. Tamsil got up without a word. He understood fully that he had been defeated. Thus, I took my revenge for that other day when three of them had early informed me of the marriage of Modufol and Benito. So long a letter. Chapter 19. I settle. Even in my mourning clothing, I have no peace of mind. After Tamsil, Dauda Din, you remember Dauda Din? My former suitor. To his maturity, I had preferred inexperience. To his generosity, poverty. To his gravity, spontaneity. To his stability, adventure. He came to Moda's funeral. In the envelope that he gave Fatim, there was a large sum of money, and his look was insistent, saying a great deal, of course. Where is he concerned? I believe to be true what he used to tell us jokingly. Whenever my chance would get to meet, he never forgets a first love. After Tamsil eliminated that memorable day, when I quelled his lust for conquest, after Tamsil, then Dauda Din, a candidate for my hand. Dauda Din was my mother's favorite. I can still hear her persuasive voice advise me. A woman must marry the man who loves her, but never the one she loves. That is the secret of lasting happiness. Dauda Din had kept himself well, compared with Mautu and Mutu. Just on the threshold of old age, he resisted the repeated attacks of time and exertion. He was elegantly dressed in a suit of embroidered brocade. He remained the same well-groomed man, meticulous and close-shaved. He wore his social success boldly, but without condescension. Although a deputy at the National Assembly, he remained accessible, with gestures that lent weight to his opinion. His lightly silvered hair gave him unquestionable charm. For the last 3 years, he had commanded attention in the political race through the sobriety of his action and precision of his words. His car, with its distinct cockade in the national color, was parked on the opposite pavement. How much I preferred his action to Tamsil's confident arrogance. His trembling lips betrayed him. I took refuge in banalities. How is Aminata, his wife, and the children, and your clinic? What is it like at the National Assembly? My questions came uninterrupted, as much to put him at ease as to renew the dialogue that had for so long been cut off. He replied briefly, but my last question provoked a shrug of the shoulders to signify, "It's all right," said challengingly. I went on, "It must be all right, that male assembly." I said it teasingly, rolling my eyes around. "Eternal woman, even in mourning, you want to make a strike, you want to seduce, you want to arouse interest." Dauda was no fool. He knew very well that I wanted to relieve him of his embarrassment and to draw back the curtain of silence and constraints that separated us, created by the long years of my former refusal to marry him. Still very critical, Ramatulai. Why this ironical statement and this provocative epithet when there are women in the assembly? Four women? Dauda, 4 out of 100 deputies. What a ridiculous ratio. Not even one for each province. Dauda laughed, an open communicative laugh, which I found stimulating. We laughed noisily together. I saw again his beautiful set of teeth, carved with a circumflex accent of a black mustache, combed and very sleek. Ah, those teeth, set close together, had won my mother's confidence. But you, woman, you are like mortar shells. You demolish, you destroy. Imagine a large number of you in the assembly. Why? Everything will explode, go up in flames. And we laughed again. Wrinkling my brow, I commented, but we are not incendiaries. Rather, we are stimulants. I pressed on. In my fields, and without skirmishes, we have taken advantage of the notable achievements that have reached us from elsewhere. The gains rested from a lesson of history. We have a right, just as you have, to educate, which we ought to be able to pursue to the farthest limits of our intellectual capabilities. We have a right to equal well paid employment, to equal opportunities. The right to vote is an important weapon, and now the family code has been passed, restoring to the most humble of women the dignity that has so often been trampled upon. But Dauda, the constraints remain. But Dauda, old beliefs are revived. But Dauda, egoism emerges, skepticism rears its head in the public field. You want to make it a close-up shop, and you huff and puff about it. Nearly 20 years of independence. When will we have the first female minister involved in the decisions concerning the development of our country? And yet, the militancy and ability of our women, their disinterested commitment, have always been demonstrated. Women have raised more than one man to power. Dauda didn't listen to me, but I had an impression that, more than my ideas, it was my voice that captivated him. And I continued, when will education be decided for children on the basis not of sex but of talent? Dauda Din was savoring the warmth of the inner dream he was spinning around me. As for me, I was bolting like a horse that has long been tethered and is now free and reveling in space. Ah, the joy of having an interlocutor before you, especially an admirer. I had remained the same Ramatulai, a bit of a rebel. I drew Dauda Din along with my other. He was an upright man, and each time the situation demanded, he would fight for social justice. It was not love of show or money that had driven him towards politics, but his true love for his fellow man, the urge to redress wrongs and injustice. Whom are you addressing, Ramatulai? You are echoing my speeches at the National Assembly, where I have been called a feminist. I am not, in fact, the only one who insists on changing the rules of the game and injecting new life into it. Women should no longer be decorative accessories, objects to be moved about, companions to be flattered, or crowned with promises. Women are the nation's fundamental root, from which all else grows and blossoms. Women must be encouraged to take a keener interest in the destiny of the country. Even you who are protesting, you preferred your husband, your class, your children to public life. If men alone are active in parties, why should they think about a woman? It is only human to give yourself the larger portion of the cake when you're sharing it out. Don't be self centered in your reaction. Consider the situation of every one of the country's citizens. No one is well off, not even those of us who are considered to be the secure and financially sound, when in fact, all our savings go down the maintenance of avid electoral clientele, which believes itself to be our promoters. Developing a country is not easy. The more responsibility one has, the more one feels it. Poverty breaks your heart, but you have no control over it. I am speaking of the whole range of material and moral poverty. Better living requires roads, decent houses, wells, clinics, medicines, seeds, I am one of those who advocate that independence celebrations should be rotated annually among the regions. Any initiative that enables regional investments and transformations is welcome. We need money, a mountain of money, which we must get from others by winning their confidence. With just one rainy season and our single crop, Senegal will not go far, despite all her determination. Night fell quickly from the skies, in a hurry to darken men and things. It came through the Venetian blinds of the sitting room. The muezzin's invitation to the Timis prayer was persuasive. Osman stood on tiptoes and flicked on the switch. There was a sudden flood of lights. Dauda, well aware of the constraint of my situation, got up. He lifted Osman up towards the lamp, and Osman chuckled. Arms stretched. He let him down. Till tomorrow, he said. I came to discuss something else. You led me into a political discussion. Every discussion is profitable. Till tomorrow, he repeated. He smiled. Neat rows of good seed. He smiled and opened the door. I heard his footsteps recede. A moment later, the humming of his powerful car carried him homewards. What will he say to Aminata, his wife and cousin, to justify his laziness? Dauda did indeed come back the next day, but unfortunately for him, unfortunately for me, my maternal aunts were visiting me, and he was prevented from expressing his feelings freely. He did not dare to stay too long. So long a letter. Chapter 20. Today is Friday. I've taken a refreshing bath. I can feel its revitalizing effect, which through my open pores soothe me. The smell of the stove surrounds me. Clean clothing replaces my crumpled ones. The cleanness of my body pleases me. I think that, as she is the object of attraction for so many eyes, cleanliness is one of the essential qualities of a woman. The most humble of hearts is pleasing when it is clean. The most luxurious setting offers no attraction if it is covered in dust. Those women we call housewives deserve praise. The domestic work they carry out, and which is not paid in hard cash, is essential to the home. Their compensation remained a pile of well-ironed sweat-smelling washing, the shiny tile floor on which the food glides, the gay kitchen filled with the smell of stews. Their silent action is felt in the least useful detail. Over there, a flower in the bloom placed in a vase. Elsewhere, a painting with appropriate colors hung up in the right place. The management of the home is an art. We have learned the hard way, and it is still not over. Even deciding on the menus is not easy if one thinks of the number of days there are in a year and of the fact that there are 3 meals in one day. Managing the family budget requires flexibility, vigilance, and prudence in performing the financial gymnastics that send you from one more or less dangerous sleep to another, and from the first to the last day of the month. To be a woman, to live the life of a woman. Ah, I said so. Tonight, I am restless. The flavor of life is love. The salt of life is also love. Dauda came back. An outfit of blue brocade had replaced the grey outfit of the first visit and the chocolate-colored one of the second. He began right at the doorway, in the right tone of voice as I had used at our first meeting, without stopping for breath. How are you, and the children, and your assembly, and what about Osman? Hearing his name, Osman appeared, his mouth and cheeks covered with the chocolate he munched all day long. Dauda grabbed hold of this little slip of a man who struggled and kicked his legs about. He let him go with a friendly tap on his buttocks and a picture book in his hands. Osman, shouting with joy, ran to show his presence to the household. No visitors? I shall lead a discussion today. I from the male assembly. He laughed maliciously. Don't think that I criticize just for the fun of it. Our incipient democracy, which is changing the situation of the citizen, and for which your party may take much credit, appeals to me. Socialism, which is the heart of your action, is the expression of our deepest aspirations if it is adapted to the realities of our life, as your political secretary claims. The openings it has created are considerable, And Senegal offers a new prospect of liberty regained. I appreciate all that, especially when all around us, to our right and to our left, one party system have been imposed. A single party never expresses the unanimous view of the citizens. If all individuals were made in the same mold, it will lead to an appalling collectivism. Differences produce conflicts, which may be beneficial to the development of a country if they occur among true patriots, whose only ambition is the happiness of the citizens. But enough of politics and what to lie. I refuse to go along with you, like the other day. I have had my fill of democracy, struggle, freedom, and what have you. All those expressions that float about me daily. Enough, Ramatu. Listen to me rather. The Bush radio has informed me of your refusal to marry Tamsil. Is it true? Yes, I intend, and of course, the second time in my life, have come to ask for your hand. After you are out of mourning, of course, I have the same feeling for you as I had before. Separation, your marriage, my own, none of this have been able to stop my love for you. Indeed, separation had made it keener. Time has consolidated it. My advancing years have purified it. I love you dearly, but with my head, you are a widow with young children. I am a head of a family. Each of us has the weight of the past to help us in understanding each other. I open my arms to you for newfound happiness. Will you accept? I open my eyes wide, not in astonishment. A woman can always predict a declaration of this kind, but in a kind of stupor. Ah, yes, I settle. Those well worn words, which have for long been used, are still being used. Their sweetness, of which I have deprived for years, intoxicated me. I feel no shame in admitting it to you. Very reasonably, the deputy concluded. Don't give me an answer immediately. Think about my proposal. I shall come back tomorrow at the same time. And as if embarrassed by his own revelation, Dauda went away after flashing a smile at me. My neighbor Famata, the bride's woman, dashed in after, excited. She was always trying to see into the future with her cowries, and the least agreement of her predictions with reality thrilled her. I met a strong rich man with the double trousers, seen in the cowries. He gave me 5,000 francs. She blinked her deep piercing eyes that were always trying to probe into mysteries. I have given the recommended arms of two white and red cola nuts. She confessed to me. Our destinies are linked. Your shade protects me. You don't fell the tree whose shade protects you. You water it. You watch over it. Dear Famata, how far from my thoughts you were. The restlessness with which I was struggling, and which you had foreseen, did not in the least signify the anguish of love. So long a letter. Chapter 21. Tomorrow? What a short time for reflection, for the decisive commitment of a life, especially when that life has known in the recent past the bitter taste of disappointment. I still have a vision of the intelligent eye of Dauda Din, the pulse of the stubborn lips, which contrasted with the gentleness emanating from his profound charitable person, who saw only the best in people and ignored the rest. I could read him like an open book, in which each sign was a symbol, but an easily interpreted symbol. My heart no longer beats wildly in the whirl of the spoken words. I am touched by the sincerity. My euphoria, born of the hunger and thirst for tenderness, fades away as the hours dance past. I cannot put out any flags. The proposed celebration does not tempt me. My heart does not love Daudin. My mind appreciates the man, but my heart and mind often disagree. How I should have liked to be galvanized in favor of this man, to be able to say yes. It is not that the memory of the disease lies heavy within me. The dead have only the weight conceded to them, or the weight of the good they have done. It is not that the presence of my young children poses a problem. He could have filled the role of the father who had abandoned them. 30 years later, my personal refusal is the one thing that conditions me. I have no definable reason. Our parents are opposed. Daudadin's reputation for seriousness has already been established. A good husband? Yes. Public rumor, so wicked and thirsty for gossip, where personalities are concerned, has never mentioned any ongoings of his. His wife and cousin, whom he married 5 years after my marriage, out of his duty as a citizen, not of love, another male expression to explain a natural action, has borne his children, wife and children, placed by this man on the pedestal of respectability, offered him an enviable refuge, the outcome of his own efforts. He never accepted any honor without associating his wife with it. He involved her in his political actions, his numerous travels, the various sponsorship for which he was canvassed and which increased his electoral constituency. Before leaving, Famata, the griotsman of the cowries, had said, "Your mother was right. Dauda was wonderful. What girl gives 5,000 francs today? Dauda has neither exchanged his wife nor abandoned his children. If he has come back looking for you, you, an old woman, burdened with a family, it is because he loves you. He can look after you and your family. Think about it. Accept all the trump cards. But what do this count for in the incontrollable law of attraction? So as not to hurt him under my roof, I sent for Martha, the man of the cowries, with a sealed envelope for him, with the following instructions. This letter must be given to him personally, away from his wife and children. For the first time, I was turning to Famata for help, and this embarrassed me. She was happy, having dreamt of this role right from our youth. But I always acted alone. She was never a participant in my problems, only informed. Just like any vulgar acquaintance, she will explain. She was thrilled, ignorant of the cruel message she was bearing. Dauda's clinic was not far from the Villa Fallen. There was a stop for the car rapids, just a few meters from his doorstep. This clinic, set up with a bank loan granted by the state of those doctors and pharmacists who expressed a desire for it, enabled Dauda Din to continue practicing his profession. He had understood that a doctor could not abandon his call. A doctor's training is slow, long, taxing, and they are not to a penny either. They are most useful in their profession than anywhere else. If they cannot combine their job with other activities, so much the better. But what insensitivity to give up looking after others for something else. Thus, would Dauda explain himself to our mutual friends, such as Mauduba and Samba Jack, his colleagues? For Martha, therefore, patiently waited for her turn, and once in front of Dauda in the consulting room, she handed the envelope over to him. Dauda read, Dauda, you are chasing after a woman who has remained the same. Dauda, despite the intense ravages of suffering, you who have loved me, who love me still, I don't doubt it. Try to understand me. My conscience is not accommodating enough to enable me to marry you. When only esteem, justified by many qualities, pulls me towards you, I can offer you nothing else, even though you deserve everything. Esteem is not enough for marriage, whose nest I know from experience, and then the existence of your wife and children further complicates the situation. Abandoned yesterday because of a woman, I cannot lightly bring myself between you and your family. You think the problem of polygamy is a simple one. Those who are involved in it know the constraint, the lies, the injustice that weigh down their consciences in return for the ephemeral joys of change. I am sure you are motivated by love, a love that existed well before your marriage, and that fate has not been able to satisfy. It is with infinite sadness and tear-filled eyes that I offer you my friendship. Dear Dauda, please accept it. It is with great pleasure that I shall continue to welcome you to my house. Shall I hope to see you again? Ramatulai. Famata, who had smiled and handing over her letter, told me how her smile soured on her face as Dauda read. Then instinct and observation brought a look of sadness to her face, for Dauda wrinkled his eyebrows, caressed his forehead, bit his lips, and sighed. Dauda put down my letter. Calmly, he stuffed an envelope with a wad of blue notes. He scrawled on a piece of paper the trembling words that had separated us before, and that he had acquired during his medical course. All or nothing. Adieu. I settled. Dauda Din never came back again. Bismillah, Bismillah, Bismillah. What was it you dared to write and make me messenger of? His crestfallen face cried it out to me. You have rejected a messenger sent to you by God to reward you for your suffering. God will punish you for not having followed the path towards peace. You have refused greatness. You shall live in mud. I wish you another model to make you shed tears of blood. What do you take yourself for? At 50, you have dared to break the Walere. You trampled upon your luck. Dauda Dean, a rich man, a deputy, a doctor of your own age group, with just one wife. He offers you security, love, and you refuse? Many women of that best age even will wish to be in your place. You boast for reasons. You speak of love instead of bread. Madame wants her heart to miss a beat. Why not flowers, just like in the films? Bismillah. You so witted. You want to choose a husband like an 18-year-old girl. Life will spring a surprise on you. And then, Ramatullahi, you will bite your fingers. I don't know what Dauda Din has written, but there is money in the envelope. He is a true Sambalinger from the olden days. May God satisfy, gratify Dauda Din. My heart is with him. Such was Famata's tirade on her return from her mission. She thoroughly upset me. The truth of this woman, a childhood companion, through the long association of our families, could not hold good for me, even in its logic of concern. Once more, I was refusing the easy way because of my ideal. I went back to my loneliness, which a momentary flash had brightened briefly. I wore it again, as one wears a familiar garment. Its cut suited me well. I moved easily in it, despite Famata, and I wanted something else, and this something else was impossible without the full agreement of my heart. Tamsir and Dauda having been rejected, there was no more barriers between the suitors and me. I then watched filing past and besieging me old men in search of easy revenue, young men in search of adventure to occupy their leisure. My successive refusal gave me in town the reputation a lioness or mad woman. Who lets loose this greedy pack of hounds after me? For my charms had faded with the many maternities, with time, with the tears. Ah, the inheritance, the fat share acquired by my daughter by her husband and put at my disposal. There led the fight for the distribution of Modo's estate. My son-in-law laid on the table the advance for the Sika villa and 5 years' rent. The Sika villa went to my daughter, who, with a bailiff affidavit in hand, listed the content and bought it. The story of Villa Fallen was easy to relate. The land and building represented a bank loan granted 10 years ago on the security of our joint salaries. The contents, renewed 2 years ago, belonged to me, and to support this claim, I produced the receipts. There remained Modo's clothing, those that I had recognized because I had chose them and cared for them, and the others from the second part of his life. I found it difficult to imagine him in this get-up of a young wolf. They were distributed to his family. The jewels and presents given to Lady Mother-in-law and her daughter were theirs by right. Lady Mother-in-law hiccuped, cried. She was being stripped, and she asked for mercy. She did not want to move out. But Daba is like all the young, without pity. Remember, I was your daughter's best friend. You made her my mother's rival. Remember, for 5 years, you deprived my mother and her 12 children of their breadwinner. Remember, my mother has suffered a great deal. How can a woman sap the happiness of another? You deserve no pity. Pack up. As for Benito, she is a victim. Your victim. I feel sorry for her. Lady Mother-in-law sobbed. Benito, indifference itself. What did it matter to her what was being said? She was already dead inside, ever since her marriage to Modo. So long a letter. Chapter 22. I feel an immense fatigue. It begins in my soul and weighs down my body. Osman, my lastborn, hauls out your letters to me. Osman is 6 years old, is Auntie Aisetu. He has the privilege of bringing me all your letters. How does he recognize them? by their stamp, by their envelope, by the careful writing characteristic of you, by the sense of the lavender emanating from them. Children have clues different from our own. Osman enjoys his find. He exults in it. These crescent words, which relax me, are indeed from you. And you tell me of the end. I calculate. Tomorrow is indeed the end of my seclusion, and you'll be there within reach of my hand, my voice, my eyes. And on new beginning, my eyes will disclose a slight change in you. I have already totaled up my own. My seclusion has weighted me. Worries have given me wrinkles. My fat has melted away. I often tap against bones. Before there was rounded flesh. When we met, the size of our bodies will not be important. The essential thing is the content of our hearts, which animates us. The essential thing is the quality of the sap that flows through us. You have often proved to me the superiority of friendship over love. Time, distance, as well as mutual memories have consolidated our ties and made our children brothers and sisters. Reunited, we'll draw up a detailed account of our faded bloom. Or will we sow new seeds for new harvest? I hear the best footstep. She is back from Blaise Diagne Secondary School, where she has been representing me in answer to his sermons. A conflict between my son, Maudu Fall, and his philosophy teacher. They clash frequently when the time comes to return corrected aces. As you know, there is a substantial age gap between Daba and Maudu Fall, the result of two miscarriages. This clash, which Daba is trying to resolve, is a third within 6 months in this form. Maudu Fall has a remarkable gift for literary work. Right from Form 1, he has been top of his class in this subject, but this year, for every capital letter forgotten, for a few commas omitted, for a misspelled word, his teacher knocks off 1 or 2 marks. Because of this, Jean Claude, a white boy who has always come second, has moved up to first position. The teacher cannot tolerate a black coming first in philosophy, and Maudu Falls complains. This always ends in a quarrel and a sermon. Daba was ready to tell the teacher off, and no nonsense. But I calmed her down. Life is an eternal compromise. What is important is the examination paper. This too will be at the mercy of the marker. No one will have any say over him. So why fight a teacher for 1 or 2 marks that can never change the destiny of a student? I always tell my children, you are students, maintained by your parents. Work hard so as to merit their sacrifices. Cultivate yourselves instead of protesting. When you are adults, if your opinions are to carry weight, they must be based on your knowledge, backed by diplomas. A diploma is not a myth. It is not everything, true, but it crowns knowledge. Work. Tomorrow, you will be able to elect to power any one of your choice, any one you find suitable. It is your choice, and not ours, that will direct the country. Now our society is shaken to its very foundations, torn between the attractions of imported vices and the fierce resistance of old values. The dream of a rapid social climb prompts parents to give their children more knowledge than education. Pollution seeps in through their hearts as well as into the air. Phased out or outdated, perhaps even old fogies, we belong to the past, but all 4 of us were made to stand staff with upright minds full of intense questionings that stuck within our inner selves, not without pain. I settle. No matter how unhappy the outcome of our unions, our husbands were great men. They led the struggle of their lives, even if success eluded their grasp. One does not easily overcome the burdens of 1,000 years. I observe the young. Where are those bright eyes, prompt to react, when scorned honor demands redress? Where is the vigorous pride that guides the whole community towards its duty? What appetite to live kills the dignity of living? You can see that I digress from the problem of Maudufo. The headmaster of the school certainly understands the Maudufo teacher conflict, but you try to side with a student against his teacher? Daba is here beside me, light-hearted, smiling all had said at a mission successfully accomplished. Daba does not find housework a burden. Her husband cooks rice as well as she does. Her husband, who claims, when I tell him he spoils his wife, the bar is my wife, she's not my slave, nor my servant. I sense the tenderness growing between this young couple, an ideal couple, just as I have always imagined. They identify with each other, discuss everything so as to find a compromise. All the same, I fear for Daba. Life holds many surprises. When I discuss it with her, she shrugs her shoulders. Marriage is no chain. It is a mutual agreement over a life program. So if one of the partners is no longer satisfied with a union, why should he remain? It may be Abdul, her husband. It may be me. Why not? The wife can take the initiative to make the break. She reasons everything out. That child. She often tells me, I don't want to go into politics. It's not that I am not interested in the fate of my country, and most especially that of women. But when I look at the fruitless wrangling even within the ranks of the same party, when I see men's greed for power, I prefer not to participate. No, I am not afraid of ideological struggle. But in a political party, it is rare for a woman to make an easy breakthrough. For a long time, men will continue to have the powers of decision, whereas everyone knows that politics should be the affairs of women. No, I prefer my own association, where there is neither rivalry or schism, neither malice nor jostling for position. There is no post to be shared, no positions to be secured. The headship changes every year. Each of us has equal opportunity to advance their ideas. We are given tasks according to our abilities in our activities and organization that work towards the progress of women. Our funds go towards humanitarian work. We are mobilized by a militancy as useful as any other, but it is a healthy militancy whose only reward is inner satisfaction. She reasoned everything out. That child, she had her own opinions about everything. I looked at her, Daba, my eldest child, who has helped me so admirably with her brothers and sisters. It is, I said, to your namesake, who has taken over here the running of the house. I said to watches the young ones, Umar, 8 years old, and Osman, your friend. The others can manage well enough on their own. I said to his help in attacks by Ami and her twin sister Awa, whom she is training. My twins are so similar that I sometimes confuse them. They are mischievous and play tricks on everybody. Aminata works better than Awa, physically so similar. Why are they so different in character? The upkeep and education of young children does not pose serious problems. Washed, fed, cared for, supervised, my own are growing well, with of course the nearly daily battles against sores, colds, headache, in which I excel, simply from having had to struggle. It is Mauduba who comes to my aid during the serious illnesses, even though I criticize him for his weakness, which broke up our relationship. I praise him very sincerely for the help he gives me. Despite his friend Modo's desertion of our home, I can still wake him up at no matter what hour. So long a letter. Chapter 23. My grown children are causing me a great deal of concern. My worries pale when I recall my grandmother, who found in popular wisdom an appropriate dictum for each event. She liked to repeat, the mother of a family has no time to travel, but she has time to die. She will lament, despite her sleepiness, she still had to carry out her share of the duties. Ah, if only I had a bed on which to lie down. Mischievously, I'll point to the 3 beds in a room. In irritation, she will say, you have your life before and not behind you. May God grant that you experience what I have gone through. And here I am today, going through just that experience. I thought a child was born and grew up without any problem. I thought one mapped out a straight path and that he would step slightly down it. I now saw, at first hand, the truth of my grandmother's prophecies. The fact that children are born of the same parents does not necessarily mean that they will resemble each other. Being born of the same parents is just like spending the night in the same bedroom. To allay the fears of the future that her words might possibly have aroused, my grandmother will offer some solution. Different personalities require different forms of discipline. Strictness here, comprehension there. Smacking, which is successful with the very young ones, annoys the older ones. The nerves daily undergo severe trials, but that is the mother's lot. Courageous grandmother, I drew from your teaching and your example the courage that galvanizes one when difficult choices have to be made. The other night I surprised the trio, as they are popularly called, Arame, Yasine, and Dianyamba, smoking in their bedroom. Everything about their manner showed that they were used to it. Their way of holding the cigarette between their fingers or raising it gracefully to their lips, of inhaling like connoisseurs. Their nostrils quivered and let out the smoke, and these young ladies inhaled and exhaled while doing their lessons and their homework. They savored their pleasure greedily, behind a closed door, for I try, as much as possible, to respect their privacy. People say that Dianyaba, Arame, and Vasini take after me. They are bound by their friendship and willingness to help, as well as by a multitude of similarities. They form a block with the same defensive and distrustful reactions before my other children. They swoop dresses, trousers, tops, being nearly the same size. I have never had to intervene in their conflicts. The trio had a reputation to work hard at school, but to grant them the right to smoke, they were dumbfounded by my anger. The unexpectedness of it gave me a shock. A woman's mouth exhaling the acrid smell of tobacco instead of being fragrant. A woman's teeth blackened with tobacco instead of sparkling with whiteness. Yet their teeth were white. How did they manage their feet? I considered the wearing of trousers dreadful in view of our build, which is not that of slim Western women. Trousers accentuate the ample figure of black women and further emphasize the curve of the small of the black. But I gave in to the rush towards this fashion, which constricted and hampered instead of liberating. Since my daughters wanted to be with it, I accepted the addition of trousers to their wardrobes. Suddenly, I became afraid of the flow of progress. Did they also drink? Who knows? One vice leads to another. Does it mean that one cannot have modernism without a lowering of modern standards? Was I to blame for having given my daughters a bit of liberty? My grandfather did not allow young people in his house. At 10 o'clock at night, with a bell in his hand, he would warn visitors of the closures of the entrance gate. He punctuated the ringing of the bell with the same instruction: whoever does not leave here shall scram. As for myself, I let my daughters go out from time to time. They went to the cinema without me. They received male and female friends. There were arguments to justify my behavior. Unquestionably, at a certain age, a boy or girl opens up to love. I wanted my daughters to discover it in a healthy way, without feelings of guilt, secretiveness, or degradation. I tried to penetrate their relationships. I created a favorable atmosphere for sensible behavior and for confidence. And the result is that, under the influence of their circle, they have acquired the habit of smoking. And I was left in the dark. I, who wanted to control everything. My grandmother's words came to mind: you can feed your stomach as well as you please. It will still provide for itself without your knowing. I had to do some thinking. There was a need for some reorganization to stop the rot. My grandmother would perhaps have suggested, for a new generation, a new method. I did not mind being a stake in the mud. I was aware of the harmful effects of tobacco, and I could not agree to its use. My conscience rejected it, as it rejected alcohol. From then on, relentlessly, I was on the lookout for its odor. It played hide and seek with my watchfulness. Sly and ironic, it would tease my nostrils and then disappear. Its favorite hiding place was the toilet, especially at night. But it no longer dared to expose itself openly with jaunty shamelessness. So long a letter. Chapter 24. Today, I was not able to finish my evening prayers as I wanted to. Cries from the street made me jump out from the mat on which I was seated. Standing on the veranda, I see my sons. Alwan and Malik, arriving in tears. They are in a pitiable state, torn clothing, bodies covered in dust from a fall, knees bleeding beneath the shorts. There is a large hole in the right sleeve of Malik's sweater. The arm on the same side hangs down limply. One of the boys supporting him explains to me, a motorcyclist knocked down Malik and Alwan. We were playing football. A young man with long hair, white glasses, amulet around the neck, moves forward. The grey dust from the road covers his denim outfit, mauled by the children for whom he had become the target. A red wound on his leg. He is visibly taken aback by so much hostility. In a polite tone and manner, which contrasts with his Slovene appearance, he offers his excuses. I saw the children too late. While making a left turn, I thought I would have a clear road, since it is a one-way street. I did not imagine the children had set up a playing field. In vain, I tried to brake. I hit the stones marking the goalpost. When I fell, your two sons also fell, along with three other small boys. I am sorry. I am pleasantly surprised by the young motorcyclist. I railed, but not against him. I know from experience the difficulty of driving in town, especially in Medina. The third surface is a favorite area for children. Once they have taken possession, nothing else counts. They will dance around the ball like devils. Sometimes, the object of their passion is a thick rag ball, all tied up. It doesn't matter. The driver's only recourse is his brake, his horn, his composure. A small disorderly open is made for him, quickly closes up again in a hustle. Behind him, the shouts begin again, even louder. It's not your fault, young man. My sons are to blame. They slipped away as I was praying. Off you go. Young man, or rather, wait a moment while I get you some spirit and cotton wool for your wound. I said to your namesake, brings methylated iodine and cotton. She takes care of the stranger, and then of Alwan. The little boys of the area disapproved of my reaction. They want the man at fault to be punished. I gave them a taking off. Ah, children, they cause an accident, and in addition, they want to punish. Malik's anger ham looked for me as if it is broken. It droops unnaturally. Quick, I said to, take him to hospital. If you can't find Maudu, go to casualty. Quick, go, child. I settled dresses quickly and speedily helped Malik to clean up and change. The dried up blood from the wounds leave dark and repulsive stains on the ground. Cleaning them up, I think of the identical nature of men. The same red blood irrigating the same organs. These organs, situated in the same places, carry out the same functions. The same remedies cure the same illnesses everywhere under the sun, whether the individual be white or black. Everything unites men. Why then do we kill each other in ignoble wars for causes that are futile when compared with a massacre of human lives? So many devastating wars, and yet man takes himself to be a superior being. In what way is his intelligence useful to him? His intelligence begets both good and evil, more often evil than good. I go back to my place on the mat, decorated with pictures of mosques in green, reserved for my use only, just as the kettle for my ablution. Alwan, still sniffing, pushes Osman aside so as to take his place beside him, looking for consolation, which I refuse him. On the contrary, I seize the opportunity to tell him off. The road is not a plain field. You got off lightly today, but tomorrow, watch out, you will have some broken bones like your brother. Alwan complains, but there is no playing field in the area. Mothers won't let us play football in the compound, so what do we do? His comment is valid. Officers in charge of town planning must make provision for playing fields when they are developing open spaces. Some hours later, I settle and Malik return from the hospital, where once again, Maudu has taken good care of them. Malik's plastered arm tells me that the drooping arm had indeed been broken. Ah, how dearly children make me pay for the joy of bringing them into the world. Just as I thought, my friend, it never rains, but it pours. This is my luck. Once misfortune has me in its grips, it never lets me go off again. I said to your namesake is 3 months pregnant. For Martha, the grites woman of the cowries, very clearly led me to this discovery. Public rumor had spurred her on perhaps, or her keen powers of observation had simply served her well. Each time she cast her cowries, to cut short our discussions, we had diverging points of view on everything. She would breathe a hum of discontent. With heavy sigh, she would put out the jumble of cowries, a young girl pregnant. I had suddenly noticed your namesake's sudden loss of weight, lack of appetite, the swelling of her breast, an indication of the child she was carrying. But puberty also transforms adolescents. They grow fatter or thinner, taller, and then, shortly after her father's death, I settled had had a violent attack of malaria, checked by Malduba. The disappearance of her plumpness dates from this period. I settled refused to regain weight. In order to keep a slender figure, I naturally ascribed her light intake of food and a distaste for certain foodstuffs to her new mania. Now thin, she swam in trousers and to my great joy, wore only dresses. Little Umar did tell me one day that I settled used to vomit in the bathroom every morning while bathing him. But I settled, when questioned, denied it, said it was a water mixture with toothpaste that she spat out. Omar no longer spoke of vomiting. My mind focused on something else. How could I guess that my daughter, who had calmed my anger during the cigarette affair, was now indulging in an even more dangerous game? Merciless fate had surprised me again, as usual, without any weapons with which to defend myself. Every day, Famata will insist a bit more on the young pregnant girl of her cowries. She will show her to me. The girl's condition was making the woman suffer. She was eloquent. Look, I say, look, this separate cowrie, hollow side turned upwards. Look at this one, adjusting itself to the other, wide side up, like a cooking pot and its cover lid. The child is in the belly. It forms one body with its mother. The two groups of cowries are separated. This indicates an unattached woman, but as the cowries are small, they indicate a young girl. And the hand rolled down again and again, the gossipy cowries. They fell away from each other, collided, overlapped. Their telltale chink filled the winnowing fan, and the same group of two cowries always remained separate to reveal distress. I followed their language dispassionately, and then, one evening, annoyed with naivety, Famata said boldly, question your daughters Ramatulaye. A mother must be pessimistic. Worried by the relentless repetition, anxious, I accepted the proposition. Moving like a gazelle with delicate limbs, she swept into Aisetu's bedroom. Afraid that I would change my mind, she came out, a triumphant gleam in her eye. Aisetu followed her in tears. Famata sent away Osman. He was nestled within my boo-boo, locked the door and declared, the cowries cannot always be wrong. If they have insisted for so long, it means there is something there. Water and sand have been mixed. They have become mad. Gather up your mind. Aisetu does not deny her condition. I have saved her by exposing the matter. You guessed nothing. She did not dare confide in you. You would never have gotten out of this situation. I was dumbfounded. I, so prone to chat, was silent. I was flushed and breathless. I closed my eyes, opened them again. I gnawed at my tongue. The first question that comes to mind on discovering such a condition is who? Who is behind this theft? For there has been a theft. Who is behind this injury? For injury it is. Who has dared? Who? Who? Aissatou mentioned a certain Ibrahim Sal, who as she talked, very soon became simply Iba. Bewildered, I look at my daughter, so well brought up, so tender with me, so ready to help in the house, so efficient in every way, so many fine qualities, allied with such behavior. Iba is a law student at the university. They met at a friend's birthday celebration. When she did not come down at lunchtime, He had invited her on 2 occasions to his room in the university halls of residence. She confessed her liking for him. No, Iba had not demanded anything, had not forced her. Everything had happened naturally between them. Iba knew her condition. He had refused the services of one of his mates who wanted to help him. He loved her. Though he was on a scholarship, he had decided to deprive himself for the maintenance of the child. I learned everything at one go, from a broken voice, accompanied by much sniffing, but without any regret. I settled Ben's head. I recognized the unvarnished truth of her story. I recognized her in the wholehearted gift of herself to this lover who had succeeded in uniting in this heart my image and his own. I settled lowered her eyes, conscious of the pain crushing me. I remained silent. My hand supported my tired head. I settled lowered her eyes. She heard my inner self give away. She was fully aware of the seriousness of her action, considering my recent widowhood, following upon my abandonment. After Daba, she was the oldest of the successions of daughters. The oldest should set an example. My teeth gnashed in anger, remembering like a life boy the tender and consoling attitude of my daughter during my distress, my long years of loneliness. I overcame my emotion. I sought refuge in God. As at every moment of crisis in my life, who decides death and life? God, the Almighty. And also, one is a mother in order to understand the inexplicable. One is a mother to lighten the darkness. One is a mother to shield when lightning strikes the night, when thunder shakes the earth, when mud bogs one down. One is a mother in order to love without beginning or end. To make my being a defensive barrier between my daughter and any obstacle. At this moment of confrontation, I realized how close I was to my child. The umbilical cord took on new life, the indestructible bond beneath the avalanche of storms and the duration of time. I saw her once more, newly sprung from me, quickly about, her tongue pink, her tiny face pressed under her silky hair. I could not abandon her, as pride would have me do. Her life and future were at stake, and these were powerful considerations, overriding all taboos and assuming greater importance in my heart and in my mind. The life that fluttered in her was questioning me. It was eager to blossom. It vibrated, demanding protection. I was the one who had not been equal to the situation. Glanced with optimism, I had not suspected the crisis of her conscience, the passion of her being, the torment of her thoughts. One is a mother, so as to face the flood. Was I to threaten, in the face of my daughter's shame, her sincere repentance, her pain, her anguish? Was I? I took my daughter in my arms. Painfully, I held her tightly. With a force multiplied tenfold by pagan revolt and primitive tenderness, she cried. She choked on sobs. How could she have lived alone with her secret? I was traumatized by the effort and skill employed by this child to escape my anger whenever she felt faint or whenever she took over from me beside my troublesome youngsters. I felt sick. I felt terribly sick. I took myself in hand with supernatural efforts. The shadows faded away. Courage, the ray of light, united to form an appeasing brightness. My decision to help and protect emerged from the tumult. It gained strength as I wiped the tears, as I caressed the burning brow. Young Aisetu shall have an appointment with a doctor not later than tomorrow. Famata was astonished. She expected wailing. I smiled. She wanted strong reprimands. I consoled. She wished for threats. I forgave. No doubt about it. She will never know what to expect from me. To give a sinner so much attention was beyond her. She had dreams of sumptuous marriage celebrations for Aisatu, which would compensate her for her own nuptials when she was a young girl. Already tied to my steps like a shadow, she used to sing your praises. Aisatu, you will give her a lot of money at the future wedding of your namesake. The theory of the fiat whetted her appetite and credited you with fabulous wealth. She dreamed of festivities, and here was this girl, who had given herself to a penniless student who would never be grateful to her. She reproached me for my calm. You have mainly daughters. Adopt an attitude that you can keep up. You will see. If I said you can do this, I wonder what your trio of smokers would do. Smother your daughters with caresses. Ramotulai, you will see. I will indeed see when I ask to meet Ibrahim Asal tomorrow. So long a letter. Chapter 25. Ibrahim Sal entered my room at the appointed time. His punctuality pleased me. Tall, simply dressed, pleasant features on the whole, but with his remarkable beautiful eyes, velvety tender in the casement of his long eyelashes. One would like to see them in a woman's face. The smile as well. I let my gaze rest on the set of his teeth. No treacherous gaps. Without being conscious about it, Ibrahim Sal was indeed the embodiment of the romantic young lover. He pleased me, and I noticed his cleanness with relief. Short hair combed, nails cut, shoes polished. He must be an orderly man, and therefore without deceit. It was I who had summoned him, but it was he who started the conversation. How many times I have wanted to arrange this discussion to let you know. I know what a daughter means to a mother, and Isato has told me so much about you, your closeness to her, that I think I know you already. I am not just looking for excitement. Your daughter is my first love. I wanted her to be the only one. I regret what happened. If you agree, I will marry Isato. My mother will look after her child. We will continue with our studies. Here then, concise and well said, was all I wanted to hear. How to reply? Should I agree readily to his proposition? For Martha, who was present during the discussion, was looking out for squeals. She asked, You were really the first? Yes, confirmed Ibasal. Then warn your mother. We, or I, shall go to see her tomorrow to announce your crime. She had better save a lot of money to compensate my niece. Anyway, couldn't you have waited until you had a good job before running after girls? Ibrahim Sal heard the gracious woman's remark without showing any irritation. Perhaps he already knew her well enough by name and character to remain politely silent. My own preoccupations were very different from those of Amata. We were right in the middle of the school year. What was to be done to prevent my daughter's expulsion from school? I told Ibasal of my fears. He too had given some thought to the problem. The child will be born during the holidays. The essential thing was not to panic. Just let the months go past, and for I started to dress in loose clothing. At the beginning of the following school year, the baby will be 2 months old. I settled would then join the final year class. After this final year, marriage. My daughter's boyfriend had worked it out logically and reminded me of Dabe's clearness of mind. Ibasal himself ran no risk of being expelled from the university, and even had he still been at school, who would inform the school of his position as father-to-be? There will be no change in him. He will remain flat, while my daughter's swollen belly will point an accusing finger. When will there be a lenient law to help erring schoolgirls whose condition is not camouflaged by long holidays? I added nothing to all this careful planning. At that moment, I felt that my child was being detached from my being, as if I were again bringing her into the world. She was no longer under my protection. She belonged more to a boyfriend. A new family was being born before my very eyes. The ripe fruit must drop away from the tree. May God smooth the new path of this child's life. Yet, what a path! So long a letter. Chapter 26. I settle. Reassuring habits regain ascendancy. My heart beats monotonously under my black wrappers. How I like to listen to this slow rhythm. A new substance is trying to graft itself onto the household. Ibrahim Sal comes every day and gives each of us what he can. He offers multifold his logic and clarity in discussions on topics of his aces. He provides chocolates regularly for Omar and Usman. He is not too proud to play with Malik and Alwan, who had given up the street for my compound. Malik's arm is still in plaster, just as long as his arm, which cannot keep away from the ball, does not break in his turn. But the trio, Arame, Yassini, and Daniba, refuse to accept this intrusion. The trio greets him correctly, but without enthusiasm. The trio are hostile to his invitations. They begrudge him for having. Ibrahim Sal urges Aisatu on in her lessons and homework. He has his girlfriend's success at heart. He does not want to be responsible for any regression whatsoever. Aisatu's marks improved. There's a silver lining in every cloud. Famata finds it difficult to accept Ibrahim Sal, whom she describes as cocksure, shameless. She never misses any opportunity of hitting out at him. Has one ever seen a stranger untie a goat in the house? Unperturbed, Ibrahim Sal tries to adapt. He seeks out my company, discusses current events with me, sometimes brings me magazines and fruits. His parents, informed some time ago by the vigilant Famata, also come around to see me and are anxious about Aisatu's health. And reassuring habits regain ascendancy. I envy you for having had only boys. You don't know the terrors I face in dealing with the problems of my daughters. I have finally decided to broach the problem of sexual education. Aisatu, your namesake, caught me unawares. From now on, I will take precautions. I address myself to the trio, the twins being still too young. How I had hesitated earlier. I did not want to give my daughters a free hand by offering them immunity in pleasure. The world is upside down. Mothers of yore taught chastity. Their voice of authority condemned all extramarital wanderings. Modern mothers favor forbidden games. They help to limit the damage and, better still, prevent it. They remove any stone or pebble that might hinder the progress of their children towards the conquest of all forms of liberty. I apply myself painfully to this necessity. All the same, I insist that my daughters be aware of the value of their bodies. I emphasize the sublime significance of the sexual act, an expression of love. The existence of means of contraception must not lead to an unhindered release of desires and instincts. It is through self-control, his ability to reason, to choose, his power of attachment, that the individual distinguishes himself from the animal. Each woman makes of her life what she wants. A profligate life for a woman is incompatible with morality. What does one gain for pleasures? Early Asian, debasement, no doubts about it. I stress further. My words fell uneasily on my female audience. Of us all, I was the most vulnerable, for the trio's face registered no surprise. My chopped sentences aroused no special interest. I had the impression that I was saying the obvious. Perhaps the trio knew already. A long silence, and the trio disappeared. I let out a sigh of relief. I felt that I had emerged into the light after a long journey through a dark, narrow tunnel. So long a letter. Chapter 27. Till tomorrow, my friend. We will then have time to ourselves, especially as I have obtained an extension of my widow's sleeve. I reflect, my new turn of mind is highly surprising to you. I cannot help unburdening myself to you. I might as well sum up now. I am not indifferent to the irreversible currents of women's liberation that are lashing the world. This commotion that is shaking up every aspect of our lives reveal and illustrate our abilities. My heart rejoices each time a woman emerges from the shadows. I know that the field of our gains is unstable, the retention of our conquests difficult, social constraints are ever present, and male egoism resists. Instrument for some, bait for others, respected or despised, often muzzled, all women have almost the same fate which religion or unjust legislation have sealed. My reflections determine my attitudes to the problems of life. I analyze the decisions that decide our future. I widen my scope by taking an interest in current world affairs. I remain persuaded of the inevitable and necessary complementarity of man and woman. Love, imperfect as it may be, in its content and expression, remains the natural link between these two beings to love one another. If only each partner could move sincerely towards the other, if each could only melt into the other, if each would only accept the other's successes and failures, if each would only praise the other's qualities instead of listing their faults, if each could only correct bad habits without harping on about them, if each could only penetrate the other's most secret hands to forestall failure and be a support while tending the evils that are repressed, the success of the family is born of a couple's harmony, as the harmony of multiple instruments creates a pleasant symphony. A nation is made up of all the families, rich or poor, united or separated, aware or unaware. The success of a nation therefore depends inevitably on the family. Why aren't your sons coming with you? Ah, their studies. So then, will I see you tomorrow in a tailored suit or a long dress? I've taken a bet with Daba, tailored suit, used to living far away. You will want, again. I have taken a bet with Daba, table, plate, chair, fork. More convenient, you will say, but I will not let you have your way. I will spread out a mat. On it, there will be a big steaming bowl into which you will have to accept that other hands dip. Beneath the shell that has hardened you over the years, beneath your skeptical pout, your easy courage, perhaps I feel you vibrate. I would like so much to hear you check or encourage my eagerness, just as before, and as before, to see you take part in the search for a new way. I warned you already. I have not given up wanting to refashion my life. Despite everything, disappointments and humiliations, hope still lives on within me. It is from this dirty and nauseating humus that a green plant sprouts into life, and I can feel new buds springing up in me. The word happiness does indeed have meaning, doesn't it? I shall go out in search of it. Too bad for me, if once again I have to write you so long a letter. Ramotulai.